As a young person afraid of the dark and not a fan of anything related to horror, I was uneasy when my mother and I moved into a 2-story house in Cape May Court, New Jersey, as it had part of the first floor's residence walled off. Being young, it didn't make sense to me that a whole section of the house was simply inaccessible without some kind of reason, to which my mom tried reassuring me that it had simply been that way by the owner's design. It never sunk in, though, and in the back of my mind always felt like something was off, as cliché as that might seem. Odd shadows would cast themselves from car lights when approaching, as my room was closest to the street. Although it was at least 15 feet from the ground, it seemed to make sense, and I did my best to ignore it. One night, a few years after living there, however, an unexplained event occurred, which still rattles me. The house was situated slightly off left from a T intersection, and with a few good yards of grass from the road. There was no streetlight, just a stop sign. My room was relatively in the middle of the house, with one window facing a neighbor's home several yards away. I say this to give you a picture of the circumstances so that you'll understand why what happened filled me with dread. Being mindful that the window to my bedroom was a good distance off of the ground, out of the way of any sources of light, and it was nighttime. I had awoken from sleep at some point and was attempting to return to it, as happens with many of us, and during that time my eyes were loosely gazing forward upon my open door and the dim nightlight in the hall directly beyond. Nothing was amiss at first, then out of nowhere, unprovoked, with no noise, a perfectly circular white spot of light traversed the hallway from right to left, in approximately the middle of the ceiling. The ordeal lasted perhaps a second, and yes, it headed towards the area that was walled off. The peculiar part of it, aside from the event itself, is that the light was only upon the hallway ceiling and did not cast itself elsewhere. My room didn't increase with brightness, and no shadow or light was cast from it to the walls of the hallway or floor. I know, a light on a ceiling seen by a young person. How grim. Precisely my point, though. Now that I have the wordage to explain why I'm still curious. A moving light on a ceiling in the dead of night. My mom was asleep, ruling out it being her with a flashlight, which would have been the best explanation, I suppose, but even that still has a few plot holes, most notably being that this light did not cone like a flashlight or flicker. So the most plausible explanation was that the light somehow came from outside, from perhaps a turning car or a neighbor pointing a flashlight in our windows for some odd reason. I wish that had been a viable explanation. But if you recall, my room was at least 15 feet off the ground towards the middle of the house, meaning any kind of light entering through the window would be subject to illuminating my room through closed blinds, not concentrated explicitly on the ceiling of the hallway outside my door. While that's the end of the story, it still creeps me out to this day. There is no plausible explanation for what I saw.
Hi, I'm Jamie Markey.
And I am a complicated Michael Tatum. It's so hard to find adjectives every week.
Very Avril Lavigne of you.
It's so hard to just kind of sum up how I'm feeling at any given moment.
Right.
You know.
But it's not any given moment. It's this moment, Michael.
Even this moment, that it's already passed, and now we're in a new phase.
So who are you right now?
Now I'm confused.
Oh, that's good. That's
I'm
good.
not. I'm
is
very
it just because
early
it's
in
like
the alphabet.
Next in the alphabet? Complicated, confused.
Yes.
Conflicted? No, confused. That's between.
Yeah, complicated, confused, cozy.
Oh, there you go. That's good.
There we go.
About to get real cozy. Thank you, Raine, for that submission.
Yes,
that is
Raine.
Such a great.
Hi, Raine. I know Raine.
You know Raine.
Yeah, he's
Here's
a
what's
friend.
funny. I didn't know that you knew Raine until I showed it, and you're like, I know Raine.
I was like, I know Raine. That's Raine.
Yes. So I thought that was such a good description of an orb.
Yeah, well, and orbs usually appear in pictures, and they're not... I'll be the first to admit, I'm not terribly convinced by orbs in pictures, but when you see them in real life...
Yeah, it's next
that's
level.
a little weird.
Right.
That's a little strange.
This is Ghoul Intentions.
Oh, yes, and this is Ghoul Intentions.
It's Ghoul Intentions.
I presume you know that. You clicked on the link. And
it's true, it's in the title.
We have feisty dogs outside.
Like last week, the dogs... are real riled up right now. If it keeps going, we're going to have to pause. I'm going to go and give them a treat. Something to chew on for an hour or something to get them to chill out.
Because Dot is barking.
She enjoys barking when she plays.
Because your house is haunted as fuck.
It's not haunted as fuck.
It's haunted.
It's a little haunted. It's a
little haunted. Whatever. You heard a crash.
I did.
The other day.
I was doing research for today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just gone down the stairs. And if anybody has lived on a two-story house or currently lives in one, you'll know that if something falls upstairs, you can hear it downstairs. I had just hit the bottom of the stairs and something crashed from the upstairs, and I was the only one there, and all the dogs were downstairs, and I looked at Dot, and she looked at me like, well, are you going to fucking do something about that? And
I know that look too. I love the look your dog gives.
That's up to you. She has eyebrows, so it makes her expressive.
It's true.
So, and barking.
And barking.
So Dot and Dexter, for those who don't know, they are Boston Terriers. So they're
beautiful Boston Terriers.
Beautiful.
Vocal Boston Terriers.
That bark is Leela.
Oh, that's Leela.
Leela is a Shih Tzu. She's very old.
And
she's 15, 16 years old. She's blind.
Is queen of the castle.
She is the alpha.
Yes.
She is the alpha.
Absolutely.
It goes Jack, then Leela, then me.
And Jack is the only...
It's very small lead.
Yeah, he's only, like, if Leela were 2 years younger.
Right, yeah. So, I'm downstairs, crash happens, Dot looks at me, what the fuck are you going to do about it? I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go back upstairs, which I knew you would be very proud of me for doing.
I'm so proud of you.
I went back upstairs. Dexter followed me. Dot did not. She stayed downstairs. And she is like my shadow.
Yeah. She clings to you.
She does. Quite a bit.
She was like, you go. I'll just handle that. I'll guard the downstairs.
Right. When I looked at you like, what are you going to do about it? I meant, what are you going to do about it? Dexter follows me upstairs. I look in all of the rooms upstairs. There's nothing. Nothing fell over. Nothing. There was nothing. And
it would have had to have been loud to come to the floor. I mean, whatever it
was so loud.
It had to have been loud.
Yeah,
and for it to be nothing is just...
Yeah.
That's not...
Yeah.
It's weird.
And I mean, it was the floor. It wasn't like it hit the ceiling or the roof of the house and then went all the way down. It wasn't like it hit the floor.
Yeah.
And then later that day, it happened again. It hasn't happened since, but it was definitely creepy. Makes me think. But that's not haunted as fuck.
I know. Well, but I mean, that's just one incident that's happened here. We've all had experiences in your house.
Well,
I've had experiences in my house, in my current
that's true
abode as well.
That's right.
So I don't know, but we had Alexis on once upon a time, and she's like, to talk about it is to invite it in. So maybe the ghosts are like,
I'm just inviting shit in.
I mean, I'm cool with that. They can hang out. I mean, they need places to go. I want to be a safe place.
Right.
For spirits.
Well, and that thought that to talk about it invites it in actually plays quite a bit into today's episode.
Yeah.
So today's episode's title
What is it?
Episode's title. No, that's right. Is Like a Thief.
Ooh, like a thief?
Yes.
Like a thief.
It comes from The Last Vampire by Christopher Pike. The entire quote is, "Death never comes at the right time, despite what mortals believe. Death always comes like a thief."
Like a thief. So I'm guessing death is going to play a pretty big role.
Significant.
Okay.
Well, I feel like that's true for all of our podcasts.
Well, that's true. But today we're doing something a little different because we talked about this a lot when we do the research for our topics, whatever they may be. We go down a lot of rabbit holes.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to do a lot of pruning, as it were, to fit in to fit in the bare bones of the story in. So today you found a topic that is so complicated and fascinating, and that there are so many many turns and twists and blind alleys and whatnot that we decided to dedicate the entire episode to it.
Yes.
And I love the fuck out of that. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be absolutely riveted because I know just enough about the story you're going to tell that I'm pretty sure 90% of what you say is going to shock the fuck out of me.
Yeah. I was shocked. And I know, we are today I am telling the hysteria of the Villisca Axe Murder House. Yes. Now, we had several people request this particular topic.
For good reason. It's like one of the most insane fucking stories of its kind.
Yes. I think the Travel Channel in one year put it as the scariest place on Earth. It has...
That might have just been for the architecture.
It could be.
That's not fair. I love Frank Lloyd Wright.
No, he didn't do this house.
No, that's right. He didn't. Oh, see, I don't know shit about the story.
Yeah,
then.
No. See,
he's involved in the story, but that's right. He didn't.
He's not really involved.
Peripheral.
But what happened was, I mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright as in some way being connected, but not really connected. But something came up in my research that included him, and since then, Michael thinks this story is about Frank Lloyd Wright. It is not.
I'm kind of obsessed with Frank Lloyd Wright because if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I'd probably be an architect.
Yeah.
I loved architecture and I love like the really modern stuff. And
Yeah.
Frank Lloyd Wright was like, one of the most bizarre and eccentric architects ever to have lived. And his stuff is really great. I would love a Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Of course you would.
Who wouldn't really? Well, there's a lot of people that wouldn't. That's not correct. But still, it's like, so the fact that he's even peripherally involved in the story. Yeah.
We'll get there. It's at least 1 to 2 sentences. So.
Well, the things you're about to describe, I do know haunted him for the rest of his life.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
They did. He carried it. He tried to deny it sometimes.
Oh,
but
God. There's no way it couldn't have. We'll get there. We'll get there.
It affected him.
There's no way it couldn't have. But in the Villisca Axe Murder House, the history, it is covered so much on ghost hunting shows. It's covered online. There's all kinds of things on YouTube about it. There's other podcasts that talk about it and have for a long time. 20 plus years at this point have discussed different hauntings and things like that about the house. So once I started getting into the history and the facts, I realized a lot of the stuff that I thought was true was not true. There's a lot of stuff that's, that is even reported still as fact that's not. And once you cross-reference, I looked up the inquest from right after the murders to courtroom documents and stuff like that. You when you cross-reference them, you find that we're not getting the whole truth. So, and then it just kept getting deeper and deeper. And I couldn't stop. And that's when I was like, I think we're going to have to do the whole episode on this.
I love it. I love everything about this.
Twice as long as normal.
So what have we gotten wrong? No, just tell the story.
We'll get there.
I'll learn all the things
because
I got wrong.
too, there are things I had heard that were wrong and things I heard were right. And it's a mixture. So I'm sure people who are listening who know of the Villisca Axe Murder House will have things that they knew and things they didn't know. And so we'll just start in. Okay.
Do it. Okay, let me have a sip of our drink.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To the long episode.
To the long episode. Oh, I love it.
Well, I mean, it may not be a long episode, but it's going to be a long topic.
A dedicated topic.
Dedicated topic.
And I guess we should. You mentioned you and I talked about this a little bit before we sat down for this. But axe murders were kind of all the rage.
Yes.
For a while in America, and why do you think that is?
I think at the time guns were not as easy to procure. Guns were like an axe; they were to hunt. And for military purposes, it wasn't like people were going around shooting each other as much. Not everybody; they weren't as cheap. They
weren't as cheap. They were very expensive.
But everybody had an axe. Everybody had an axe.
Well, it was a tool.
It was a tool.
It was a household tool. But
you had to have it. People also would leave them leaning against a tree, leaning against a pile of wood. They were just very accessible, and they did the job pretty quickly.
Cutting down trees and human lives.
Exactly.
If you were
and you compare an axe to a knife. Here we go. zombie apocalypse. Do you want an axe? Do you want a knife?
Well, I suppose if you are going to, like, cleave someone, like an axe is probably it's such a visceral thing, but
yeah.
I suppose like a knife, you got to get right there. With an axe, there's a little bit of distance.
Yeah, you can get bit if you have a knife.
That's true.
But also, an axe is more likely to get the job done.
Oof.
You know.
Oof.
So, okay.
Ugh. Okay.
Villisca is a town located in the southeast quarter of Iowa, between Omaha and Des Moines. It's like an hour and a half between them. It's just a little bit south. And it's like north of Kansas City, a couple of hours. It took me a minute to place that in my mind.
In my mind, this makes it like I'm no man's land.
Right, yes.
Okay.
It's up and over there. That's how Jack would say.
Go to the middle of nowhere, turn right, and follow the trail
straight on till morning. And then you'll be in Neverland, Villisca. So today the population, it's a small town. The population's around 1,200 people. But in the early 1900s, it was a flourishing little town of 2,500 people.
Okay.
They had a train depot. They had businesses lining the streets. It was a flourishing little town, 2,500 people. It was a small town, but it was flourishing. It was doing really well. And at the time, people would say that Villisca meant pretty place or pleasant view. It was just a homey little town. So now we go to June 9th, 1912. It was Sunday, and it was a sunny day. It was cool, which... the weather, it was like 60 degrees, 55, 60 degrees. But it was on June 9th. And to me, I was like...
seems unseasonably chilly for June.
Texas it is, but maybe not in Iowa.
Yeah, well, that's true.
At the time, 43-year-old Josiah B. Moore, or Joe, as he was known, was the most successful businessman in town. He and his wife, 39-year-old Sarah Montgomery Moore, had been married for 12 years and had 4 children together. Herman Montgomery, who was their eldest, and he was 11 years old and considered quite his father's son. He was his father's shadow, known to follow him around a lot. There was Mary Catherine, their only daughter. She was 10 years old. Arthur Boyd was 7, and Paul Vernon was 5. Sarah was an active member in the Presbyterian Church, and she was leading that night the annual Children's Day program at 8 p.m. 12-year-old Lena Gertrude Stillinger and Lena's youngest sister, 9-year-old Ina May, joined the Moore family at church, but they didn't want to walk back home in the dark. So they had gone to church that morning. They'd spent the little time. They were going to go to their grandmother's house, go back for the church program because all of them were a part of the program. And it makes me think of the church services where the kids kind of put it on and the parents watch. And
yeah, we used to do that when I was growing up.
Like a church pageant.
It was called the Children's Hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Generally.
So afterwards, I believe they were going to walk back home or walk back to their grandmother's, but it was 9:30 by the time it was done, and they didn't want to walk home in the dark. So around...
It was also chilly.
It was chilly. Yeah. It was probably chillier at that point. But, they're 12 years old and 9 years old, I think is what I said.
Right.
So it just got... I would imagine they were just a little scared. So Joe decides, you know what, you guys can stay with us for the night. They did have school the next day on Monday, but to prevent them from having to go. You read a lot, too, that it was a slumber party. It really wasn't. They just were afraid to walk home in the dark. And so Joe called at about 6 o'clock that night to talk to the Stillinger parents, who were also a Joe and Sarah.
I mean,
there wasn't a lot of versatility with names back then, but I thought that was interesting, and it becomes more interesting a little bit later.
Okay.
In a coincidence. Okay. Creepy coincidence later.
All right.
Calls to talk to them.
Okay.
Their older sister, Blanche, answers. And great name, Blanche. Love it.
It is a power name.
It is. Mom and Dad are outside. Well, how can I help you, right? And he says, the girls don't want to walk home in the dark. We're going to keep them here tonight, if that's okay. Let your parents know they don't need to worry about the kids tonight. Okay, cool. Gets off the phone. They finish the program, the church program. They gather everyone up. So the 2 parents, 6 kids. And they walked 3 blocks home around 9:30. right when it was over. The next morning, the Moore's neighbor, 63-year-old Mary Peckham, got up around 5 a.m. to get a head start on her morning chores.
Sounds like my mom.
Right. As she was hanging laundry on the clothesline outside, she noticed the only sounds in the still dark sky were the birds chirping. Nothing seemed too out of the ordinary. But around 7, 2 hours later, when Mary still hadn't noticed any noise coming from her neighbor's house, she grew concerned. You know, she didn't know the girls were staying, but that's 4 kids that are 10 and under or 11 and under of the Moore's children.
Right.
They're not going to be inside at 7 a.m. You know, they're supposed to be getting ready for school.
Like, someone's going to be up making breakfast. Like, there'll be activity.
And not just that. They had livestock. They had chickens. And it was super quiet. So...
Yeah, can you imagine being the neighbor of, like, in that time period going like,
something's weird.
Something's going on because that house, there are no signs of life coming from that house, and it is like, the sun's already up. What the fuck's going on?
Why isn't anything happening? And she didn't even have the term spidey sense at the time. Right. So she decided to go over and knock on the front door of their house. It's a classic white frame 2-story farmhouse, and nobody answered. She tried to open the door because at the time, most people didn't lock their doors. However, it ended up being known that Joe was different. He would lock the doors at night. He always locked the doors at night. Which
was very unusual.
Unusual, but...
For the time period.
You know, I think it was only at night, though. So...
But that's what you always hear about. Like, people just didn't lock their doors at night.
Yeah.
Like, you hear that in the 60s.
All. Yeah. Some towns now.
Yeah.
Don't lock your doors. Lock your doors.
Oh, God, yes.
So she tried to open the door, but it was locked. Still no noise. So she went to the back of the house. None of the livestock had been taken care of yet. She didn't mess with the livestock, but she did let the chickens out of their cage and went back to her house. Joe's employee, Ed Sully, had received a call from Ross.
It's Joe's brother?
Joe's brother.
Okay.
And then from Mary, wanting to know where he is. And she said, livestock's not out. So Ed came over to let the livestock out.
Okay.
And Mary, then, still worried, Joe's not at work. Ed doesn't know where he is. What's going on? She calls Ross. Ross has already tried to get a hold of him, and he's not at the store. She calls. She says, "Hey, is everything okay with your parents? Did the family? Did they go see your parents? Is everybody healthy?" She just wondered where they were.
Right.
Well, Ross knew there wasn't anything wrong with the family, and that Joe hadn't gone to the store, so he came over. By the time he got there, it wasn't too long. Mary had come over, and they met at the front door. Ed had gone back to the shop. They walk around the house, knock on the windows. Windows are all covered. Blinds are drawn. Nobody answers. So Ross has a key. He has a spare key. Lets himself in the door. Walks in for a little bit. Few minutes. Comes back out. Tells Mary to call the sheriff. Something awful has happened. So she calls the sheriff. When the sheriff, his name's Hank Horton, which is the best sheriff name I've ever heard in my whole life.
Hank Horton.
Sheriff Hank Horton.
Can his middle name be Henry?
Sure, why not?
Hank Henry
He's
Horton.
Triple H. When he arrived, Ross let him into the home and into the first bedroom, which was downstairs. So there's a bedroom downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs. That's where the Stillinger girls were sleeping. Horrified at the sight, the 2 men made their way to the other bedrooms. Everyone was still in their beds, covered in blankets and blood, and they were all dead. All 8 had been brutally murdered.
Jesus.
The men continued looking around the house and noted that all doors and windows remained locked. Mary, who had entered on the first floor and kind of stayed in that space, noticed that the doors had to have a key to lock it from the inside. And the key to lock the door was gone. So whoever had left last used the key to lock the door and then took the key with them.
Oof.
Yeah. With no sign of forced entry, they assumed that the killer or killers were most likely already inside the house when the Moores got home the night before, and he or they had waited until the family went to sleep. 2 spent cigarettes later found in the attic supported their theory. However, the attic was full, and it was attached right to the master bedroom, so where Joe and Sarah were sleeping. that's where the attic was. And
so they found cigarettes in the attic?
They found 2 spent cigarettes in the attic.
Cigarette butts in the attic.
But
that's
weird. I didn't see a lot of that in the court stuff, so I don't know if that's just conjecture, but I have read that their closets in the attic were full.
Okay.
It was a small house. Their clothes were hanging like on the walls and on the staircase.
Okay. Because
they didn't have any closet space and the attic was full of stuff.
All right.
Stands to reason.
Right.
That they had a few things. So if they had waited in the attic or any of the closets in the house, they would have had to clear everything out, get in, put it all back in, and then shut the door. And then when they went to kill everybody while they were sleeping, somehow have opened the door, emptied the stuff, gotten out, killed them, put the stuff back in, and then shut the door.
Okay.
Doesn't seem plausible when you think about it.
I guess. But if they found cigarette butts up there, do you think that was just like...
It could have just been Joe.
It could have been.
Smoking a cigarette in the attic instead of going all the way downstairs.
Maybe.
Workers.
Maybe. Makes sense.
Yeah. It could be a number of things.
Okay.
No DNA, so we'll never know.
Right.
Sheriff Horton knew there was no hope of survival, of course, but he went to go get a doctor anyway. He was really, really bothered by this whole thing. He went to go get a Dr. Cooper, and Dr. Cooper said that when he went to get him, he was visibly upset. And he's like, "You need to come with me now." And he's like, "What happened?" And he said, "Someone's killed the Moore family, everybody." And he went over, and when he got there, there was another doctor, Dr. Huff, and the Presbyterian minister, Mr. Ewing, were all there. It's most likely that Mary called them to be there. The neighbor.
Okay.
But we'll get into why later. It's fascinating. Okay. So
many layers already.
I know. They go into the house, and when all 4 of them, and when they entered the first floor bedroom where Lena and Ina Stillinger slept, Dr. Cooper said, quote, "All we could see was an arm of someone sticking from under the edge of the cover with blood on the pillows. And I went over and lifted the covers, and I saw what I supposed was a body. Some entire stranger and a mere child at the back of the bed. I did not recognize them at all, and neither did any of the people, the others then that were with me, and we merely saw that they were dead and that there were only 2 in the bed, and then we stepped out into the parlor." So it was horrifying.
I mean, there was just nothing identifiable about them anymore. They were so brutalized.
Right. And it was only their heads.
Oh, God.
For the most part.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. Children, too.
After that, they headed upstairs where the sheriff moved a lamp that had been turned down low with no chimney that had been left sitting at the top of the stairs or at the foot of the bed. It depends on who you talk to. And I haven't been in the house, so maybe the top of the stairs is very close to the foot of the bed. I don't know. But the sheriff moved it, and they took note that it was turned down really low, so the light would be really low, and they took the chimney off and just left it there.
Oh, you're talking about a
chimney, that goes on top of a lamp.
Like a gaslight.
Yeah, gaslight.
The gaslight or a candle.
Yeah,
lamp.
Yeah. So it's a glass chimney that goes on top to contain the flame.
Yes.
That had been taken off.
Yes.
Which could have started a fire.
Oh, God, well.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I guess thank God it didn't.
Right. That also comes into play later. They moved into the master bedroom where they found both Josiah and Sarah. The chimney to the lamp was later found under their dresser. Another lamp turned down with no chimney was found in the downstairs bedroom at the foot of the bed there, where the Stillingers girls were.
That's odd. Mm-hmm. So 2
that had been turned down low. Most likely for light. Minimal light that wouldn't wake anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Yeah. After leaving the master bedroom, they found the children in the second upstairs bedroom. They were all in their beds and had also been killed while they were asleep. A common myth says that the murders happened around 12:45 a.m., but based on the testimony of Dr. Cooper, that is inaccurate. Dr. Cooper,
because I was here about at 12:15.
12:45, sometime right before 1. If you watch the videos, a lot of people on the videos on YouTube and stuff like that go ghost hunting there will be like, this is the time that they died. It's not.
Really?
It's not, yeah.
How did that become the prevailing view?
I don't know.
Huh.
Because it's much closer to the witching hour.
I guess.
I mean, the actual time of death.
Yeah.
Because that's like 3:15, right?
Is that the actual time of death?
Between 2:15 and 3:15. Wow. So
that is
Dr.
the actual
Cooper, when he watched them, he paid attention to the consistency of the blood, the coagulation, and he estimated they had been killed 5 to 6 hours before he was there, and he was there at 8:15. So that would have put their time of death at 2:15 to 3:15.
Okay.
Not 12:45. It was...
I wonder where the 12:45 came from.
I don't know. It was within hours of Mary coming outside.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like they had maybe only been dead for 2-3 hours when she came outside to start her day. Oof.
And let's see.
I wonder if whoever did it was still there.
Well, interesting that you should ask that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We'll get there too.
Okay. There's so many things I want to know.
I know. So it became pretty clear that the killer or killers had started in the master bedroom. Josiah had received the worst of the attack. Based upon the condition of his face, without getting into it. The killer had mostly used the blunt side of the axe as well, not the sharp side.
Wow.
So he bludgeoned them. He didn't just chop them.
Why would you...
I don't know.
That seems so odd to me. Like, you've got an axe, you've got a weapon that'll kill them with one chop if you do it, and instead you choose to bludgeon them, which is a much harder way to kill someone. I mean, you got repeated blows are required.
Right. Well, I think it stands to reason that this person is not a sane human being.
Well, clearly.
Yeah.
But it's just the weird irony of that. I'm going to kill you with an axe, but I'm going to beat you to death with an axe rather than, the obvious choice.
Right. Yeah. Because I had always thought too, I didn't know that about the blunt side versus the
I'd
sharp
always
side.
thought, I guess I always pictured like a double-sided axe, but I guess that's not, that most axes are not double-sided, especially for home use.
That's more like a Viking thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's battle axes. Battle axes are
Battle
like
axes.
double-bladed.
Ah, then it makes sense why there's so many battle axe murders. Of course there are. Obviously.
That's what they're made for.
That's right. The information varies back and forth.
Right.
Who got the blunt, who got the blade. Initially, a lot of places will say that it was Joe. Joe got the blade. But as we will later discuss, there was reason to make people think that Joe was the intended target. Mm. And that's when that started getting out. Because obviously they would have used the blade on him because he was the intended target.
Okay.
But in one of the court proceedings, because somebody was accused of the crime and went and they did go to court for it, there was testimony that only Sarah had been hit with the blade. But in the inquest,
the Inquisition.
So there was a Dr. Williams. He showed up right after Dr. Cooper and the other group left the first time. He had been found by Ed Sully. He passed him on the street or something like that. And Ed was like, hey, you might want to go, because at this point he knew what had happened. Okay. So he sent Dr. Williams over. Dr. Williams got there and he actually did the investigation of the bodies. And in his statement, he says it's clear that Lena had blade markings in her skull.
Now, which one was Lena? One of the girls?
Lena was the 12-year-old girl.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But was she the only one that had blade wounds?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
But when he talks in the inquest, he says it was clear in those papers. He said you could see where that blade had hit her. All of that is to say, I don't know. I think it was probably Sarah and Lena, but Lena was 12. So maybe they didn't want to discuss all of the things that possibly happened to Lena.
God.
Yeah, it's dark. This is really dark.
Well, too. I mean, it's...
Trigger warning for people. This is real dark.
It's an axe murder. Mm-hmm. It's going to be dark regardless.
Yeah. So, it became clear that the killer or killers had started in the master bedroom.
Okay.
After that, the children's room were next, and Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul were killed in the same way as their parents. That's after the children were killed, they went back to the master bedroom to have another go. at Joe or Sarah. And the reason they believe that is because the coroner, who was Dr. Lindquist, he actually didn't even arrive to the scene until 9 a.m. He found one of Sarah's shoes on Joe's side of the bed. The shoe was found on its side. However, it had blood inside it as well as under it. So he assumed the shoe had been upright when Josiah was first struck and that the blood ran off the bed into the shoe. He believed the killer later returned to the bed to inflict additional blows and subsequently knocked the shoe over.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Mm-hmm. Like, so whoever this was, like, killed them, went and killed the kids, decided, let's go back upstairs and, like, make sure.
Well, they were still upstairs. So the master bedroom's upstairs. Then they go over to the children's room, which is upstairs. Oh, okay. They go back to the master bedroom. Okay. And then they went downstairs and murdered the Stillinger girls.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Ina had been sleeping closest to the wall with Lena on her right side. Lena was found lying crosswise in her bed and had apparently been struck in the head and somehow squirmed about a third of the way down the bed. Her nightgown was slit up and she was wearing no undergarments. They were found on the floor and had been used to sloppily clean off the axe, which was also found in that room. There was a blood stain on the inside of her right knee and what doctors assumed was a defensive wound on her arm. He also said he found no evidence of sexual assault. Out of all of the victims, Lena was the only one awake during her attack, and she tried to fight back. All of the victims' faces were covered with clothing items after they had been killed.
And she had been in the downstairs.
Downstairs.
So whoever this was, they think, just to recap, they think they started in the master bedroom with Josiah and his wife.
Sarah.
And then moved to the their kids' bedrooms,
killed all
upstairs, killed them, came back and killed or did more damage overkilled
right.
Josiah and Sarah, and then went downstairs to kill the Stillinger kids.
Yes.
And so do you think, I mean, I'm obviously getting ahead of us here because you know more about this than I do, but like, do you think the person didn't realize the Stillinger kids were there?
No, I think they knew.
Because why would you go back? Like, just why not? I mean,
why not go kill them first?
Why not kill them like before you went back? That just seems like a weird choice to make because they're downstairs. They can get out of the house or at least scream and wake a neighbor if, the sounds of you killing everyone upstairs and then going back to overkill someone. I mean, that's giving the people downstairs a lot of time to thwart your plans.
It's true. However, there is a theory, which is one I lean towards, is that he didn't actually hit them multiple times. That these doctors had never seen someone hit in the face with the backside of an axe before, and it can do a lot of damage if there's some power behind it. So if there was enough power to gouge the ceiling in the upswing. One whack, they're dead. Children's room, whack.
That's a loud noise.
It is, but they were next to a train tracks. They were within walking distance of the train station. And when that train comes through town, you hear it. In some of the YouTube videos, you can hear the train blaring. And also, anybody who has kids will tell you they will sleep through anything. Anything. And especially considering they had had a full day at church with all the services and playing and people over.
I'm sure the kids could have slept through whatever noise was going on upstairs. I'm just saying that in the mind of the killer, for them to be like, they're fine, I'll get to them later, seems a weird.
It seems like he might be very confident.
Yeah.
Right? And
I guess if whoever it was had the key, that would have let them in outside the house, or like they couldn't have gotten out without the key. And if they had it, or they didn't know what the key was, I mean, I don't know.
There's no, we don't know.
That's a weird detail.
But there was no.
But I guess we're not dealing with someone who's sane.
Right, exactly. And there was no, nothing, no like evidence of chloroform or any kind of smell of anything that would have knocked them out. I think, too, a lot of people when they're in a situation that's dangerous, they freeze. It's flight or fight, right? And if you can't flee, you freeze. It happens. That's like the new thing they're saying. It's a freeze thing. A lot of, especially now, like with all the Me Too and stuff like that, that's a huge reaction. That we learn that women and men freeze up. They're too afraid to move. that could have likely played.
Well, and I guess if you're a child and you're downstairs and you hear these noise coming from upstairs, you're not immediately going to think the worst. You're going to sit around and wait until, like,
maybe they thought the house was haunted.
And they may have called out, but what are they going to do? Like, are they going to be like, oh my God, let's scream because we hear some thuds coming from upstairs?
Yeah,
they may not have done that.
I don't think the 9-year-old would have woken
Especially
up.
if they were guests.
Yeah.
They
right,
would have
that's true too.
Woken up the whole house. So it's just weird to me, like, to think. I mean, this is an image that I'm completely inserting just from my own imagination, but my idea is that the killer is making these loud noises. Because I mean, even if it's one whack, those are loud whacks, and maybe the children downstairs heard it and called up, and the killer may have answered them. Just to kind of keep them down there, and then like, I'll get back to you. And maybe they went back to the other bedroom, to the master bedroom, because
maybe it didn't work, especially if it was just one.
Josiah wasn't dead.
Exactly.
Or maybe one of them wasn't dead yet, and like heard him groaning, or Sarah groaning and thought, I got to go back there and take care of them before I go down to take their kids. It's just so the timeline, the logistics of it are what make it so fucking creepy.
Right.
Because
and also nothing was stolen. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't anything like that.
Well, I mean, you never like, no one's going to axe a family and to steal something,
right?
I mean, that's just.
Maybe. I don't want to say no one.
I mean, well, that's.
I don't want to say no one.
But most thieves are going to get in, get out, do something quick. Like, they're going to rob the house when no one's there.
It seems to me, his master children had to go back to the master bedroom. They didn't want. I don't think it was a choice.
Didn't want to, but had to.
They had to finish, and since Joe seemed to have gotten the worst of it, and based upon the description, he got the worst of it. It seems like possibly Joe was not dead, and he had to go back. To come back to finish the job. Then he went downstairs and got the kid, and then all of them were covered with a piece of clothing. So they had the sheets over them, and the blankets. And then he put a coat, like Ina had a coat over her face. So he covered all of the faces.
Why?
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Because the curtains were also drawn on all of the windows except 2, which were, since they had no curtains, covered with some of Moore's clothing. The Moore's family's clothing. And the mirrors had been covered.
Oh, that's an old...
Yeah, so for people who don't know, covering a mirror during or after a death is a tradition all over the world. Oh, it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
In the U.S. specifically, it's mostly been because people believed if the soul of a dead person were to see their reflection or paintings of land or people or food, it would become distracted and want to remain on Earth. Another common belief was that a soul remained in the home for 3 days after death, and any mirror that captured its image would either tarnish or, worse, reflect a picture of the dead permanently. In Judaism, during Shiva, the 7-day ritual of mourning after death, in that time period, mirrors are often covered for 2 reasons. They eliminate any chance of distraction for a mourner from concentrating on his deceased friend or family member. You're not going to be looking in the mirror, checking out your hair or anything. Be focused on the dead. And then there's some historic belief that during Shiva, evil spirits may attach themselves to reflections in mirrors. And windows are often covered in these traditions to avoid reflection as well.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder if the windows weren't covered to hide what was going on inside. Maybe everything was covered up because of a deeply held belief based on these traditions. Maybe the killer didn't want to be haunted by the spirits of the people he killed. And I mean, why cover up the windows on the 2nd floor? It's not like he had time to draw the curtains and not wake anyone up. He could not have drawn those curtains before he killed everybody.
No, yeah.
It would have had to have been after.
Yeah.
So what's he doing after that either people are going to see? Why cover them up to begin with? If you're just getting in, killing them, and getting out. It's weird.
That is very weird.
Also.
But again, clearly a crazy person.
It's so fucking weird. The details are so weird. Even stranger. A 2-pound slab of bacon was found wrapped in a dish towel on the floor next to the axe in that bedroom downstairs.
Why?
Another slab about the same size was in the icebox. On the table in the kitchen, they found a pan of bloody water along with a plate of uneaten food.
Why?
Well,
I don't understand.
Here's
like,
what I think.
I guess the bloody water I get, whoever it was
Cleaning
probably
up.
washing themselves.
Plate of food.
But an uneaten plate of food.
Well, if you're going to take food from someone's house, obviously bacon is going to be what you're taking. First of all, that just makes sense.
It travels better.
It travels well. It travels really well. It was wrapped in a dish towel. I think he was planning to take it with him. I think he was planning to sit down and eat, but he got interrupted.
By what?
By what? By someone going out to hang their laundry? Maybe? At 5 o'clock in the morning?
But, I mean, do you think... But someone getting up at 5:30 in the morning... I mean, again, I'm just kind of inserting my own opinions here because I don't know shit, but someone in that time period would have been ready for someone to wake up before dawn because a lot of people did.
Oh, yeah.
So whoever this was surely would not have hung out knowing that, I should probably get out of here because someone's going to see me if I wait any longer. So sitting down to take a plate of food, like, it's almost suggests that the person didn't care if they got seen or caught and maybe had a change of heart.
Or maybe they got distracted and lost track of time.
I guess murder can do that.
That's our new title. Murder can do that.
Murder can make you lose track of time.
Yeah.
That's...
Distracted. I mean, you think he did the murders and then covered their faces. Went through the closets because he'd gone through their closets to find clothes and gone through stuff to find clothes to put over their faces.
Why do you think whoever it was covered their faces?
Well, it was probably gross. He just didn't want to see it.
But they did it. Like,
well,
why would they? Like, why would they suddenly go? That's gross. I don't want to look at that anymore. I'm like, well, then fucking leave. Like, like, why are you hanging around?
Why are you hanging around? That is such a great question. And I think it comes into play a little bit later.
Okay.
Why are you hanging around? Why are you... Because people hear about the curtains being covered and they assume that he did it first.
But he couldn't have without waking everyone up.
But there's no fucking way he could have. There's no way he could have.
There's no way he would have risked doing that.
He could have filed clothes.
Now, is it possible the family drew the curtains themselves?
Yeah, but they would not have put the pieces of their clothing, aprons and shit, over the windows that didn't have any curtains.
Yeah, no, that's fucking weird.
So it seems consistent that this person probably drew the curtains and hung up the stuff to cover the windows. And they covered the mirrors. So
what the fuck were they doing after the murder and before they left?
Okay, so after the murders, they had to go to the closets, find the stuff. Mm-hmm. They had to hang up, pull the curtains. They had to hang up the stuff over the windows.
Cover the mirrors.
They had to cover all of the mirrors. And that's a little time consuming.
Well,
so let's estimate that it's a 3:15 thing. 4:15 at least to do all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's 4:15. Okay, I'm going to get a plate of food. I'm going to get this bacon or whatever.
Take it with me.
That's 4:15. That's real close to the time.
That is really close. And it may
5 a.m.
And who knows? I mean, it's... But why cover... I mean, to me, the idea of covering up the windows, of drawing the curtains, and using clothes to cover the windows after the fact suggests that they were hanging out for a while, that they intended to hang out for a while.
For at least a little bit.
Because, I mean, the windows, for example, the windows that were covered with clothes, was that one of the windows where the bodies were?
I am not entirely sure.
Okay, because
but I do
it would
know
make sense
every
if
single window was.
Okay, because it could make sense if he's like, well, maybe I should cover these windows so the bodies aren't found for a little while, so I have a chance to get the fuck out of town. But why bother with a window that didn't offer a view of any room that the bodies were in, if that's the case?
Right.
And what the fuck did they have to do with the mirrors? Like, why cover up the mirrors? And that was clear. That's clearly a religious or an occult thing.
Right.
But, I mean, for them to have been there... I mean, oh my God, it's
because they definitely had to be there a little bit afterwards to do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the not eating and the leftover bacon are the big tells. If they were going to take the food with them. And he got tripped up.
He was in the middle of about to start to eat this plate of food and the bacon and suddenly realized...
What time it was, maybe.
Maybe he saw the neighbor.
Yeah, or heard her.
Or heard her stirring about or whatever. Or maybe it was even there long enough for, like, whoever, I'm assuming it's a him because murderer. Not the women don't murder.
No, but they're more into poison.
Yeah, well, that's... God love him for it. But what if, what was the neighbor's name? Mary?
Mary.
What if
Peckham, yeah.
whoever it was still in the house when she came over to knock on the
I
door?
thought about that too.
And
Like-
maybe that's what made him realize, oh, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Because it may have been so dark that he didn't, 5:30 in the morning.
She didn't go over until 7.
Oh, okay.
What if she did? Or what if she snooped a little? What if she's a little snoopy and she didn't want to admit that she had been snooping?
Well, why would she? Well, I guess.
And it doesn't make sense for him to stay till 7.
Yeah, well, because everyone
people
would have seen
start
him
asking.
starting.
Yeah.
But it's possible that he may have just heard her out in the backyard or something.
Yeah.
Doing her thing, hanging laundry
But
and
it
stuff,
seems
and
like-
thought, oh, fuck.
I gotta get out of
Get
here.
the fuck out of here because
Yeah.
he lost track of time.
Because he lost track of time.
God, that's so fucked up. Like, the psychology of who did this.
Yeah.
Like, and just
Well,
being upstairs, killing them, going to the kids' room, killing them, going back to kill Josiah, probably.
Yeah.
And then being like, all right, now I'll go downstairs and kill the other kids. Okay, done with that.
who's hungry?
Let
me cover all these windows.
Let me cover
and
the
mirrors
windows and cover up the mirrors because I don't want the spirits to not
Haunt
be able
me.
to free. Like, it was in my family, because when my grandfather passed away, we covered he died at home, and we the hospice workers and everything knew ahead of time to cover all the mirrors in the house, and that was a good thing. And my dad had to explain it to me that it was just something that side of the family believed, and it was when the soul left, they didn't want it to get trapped in a
Right.
mirror, getting distracted.
And there's the other thing too, crack a window so the spirit can get out too.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's
Irish.
But that's very odd though that this person was concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're gonna kill them, but you're gonna worry about their soul.
Right.
That seems.
See, I don't think that's what it was. That's why I think he didn't want to be haunted, because it doesn't seem like he would give a shit about their soul. He certainly didn't care about their life.
Well, yeah, and someone that's gonna be a murderer probably doesn't want to give a lot of thought to the idea of the immortal soul, because where he gonna go after he die?
Right.
Because he's a fucking murderer.
Right.
So, but that's weird. So, what were the mirrors all about? Maybe it was a psychological thing. He didn't want to see himself.
Could be.
But still,
But it's such a tradition. I lean towards the tradition. Just
it does seem a little
logically,
excessive for them to have just done it because he didn't want to look in a
didn't wanna
mirror,
look at
because you could
himself.
avoid in a mirror, but
Right.
to actually cover it up, that's actually, you have to go up to the mirror and spend the time to
Right.
actually drape it.
And how do you go through murdering if you can't stand to look at yourself? How do you go through doing the murders and then cover
That's
the
so
mirror?
fucked up. It's so fucked up, Jamie. It's
I
so
know.
fucked up.
I know. We're not even close to done. So, of course, small town news travels fast. Neighbors and curious onlookers came to the house, and the police lost control of the crime scene very quickly.
Oh, shit.
Which is why the inquest is so important, because those are the first people that were there. It said that up to 100 people traipsed through the house, gawking at the bodies. At least one person took a fucking piece of Joe's skull as a souvenir.
What?
Yes, he wrapped it in some paper and took it and put it in his shop. Fucking
Well, the
crazy.
killer can't even take bacon, but some
Right.
fucking...
Gets a piece of his skull. What the fuck?
God, what if whoever did that was the actual murderer and they came back to the scene of the crime? Once I saw, I'm just
Maybe
saying.
it took a souvenir.
Because I didn't take the bacon, but...
Right, but I'm going to get this skull piece. The Villisca National Guard had to be called in to secure the scene, but they didn't get there until noon. So coroner gets there at 9.
3 hours of people just going
Just going
through
in,
and
checking things out.
corrupting
Completely.
the crime scene.
Completely.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And also, the other crazy thing is the coroner, Dr. Lindquist, refused to release the bodies from the scene until he was ordered to do so by the county attorney, because that was what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Except the county attorney was out of town. He didn't get home till that night. So all of the bodies stayed in that house
hung
until
out.
11 p.m. that
God.
night. Almost 24 hours after they were killed.
Shit.
They were there.
Jesus fucking Christ.
It's crazy. There were a lot of rumors about what happened to the closet thing, it being focused on Joe.
We don't know that the Joe was necessarily the focus. He just got the worst because maybe the killer had to go back to make sure he was dead.
Yeah. One of this crazy rumor that I saw was that this widow who had been upset with a family there hired an Indian to kill the Moore family for revenge, and the prints of his moccasins could be seen off the front step.
You mean a Native American?
No, according to that story, he's an Indian.
Less enlightened time, but
Right.
they were like, only a Native American could have done something this brutal.
The thing is, the guy who posted it in the 80s. It's like, come on, motherfucker. And the other thing is there's no evidence that any prints were ever found. Ever.
Well, and
and by the time everybody got there and traipsed through there, you couldn't have found 100 people went in and out of there.
Yeah.
And
that's just racist as fuck.
Other thing about that, too, I want to
and
point
sexist.
Out. Absolutely. Speaking of this whole savage Indian angle, remember at the beginning when I said Villisca supposedly meant pretty place or pleasant view? Well, after the murders, people started saying it actually came from the Indian word Villisca, which means evil spirit. And so I'm going to call bullshit on that.
Why would you name a town Evil Spirit?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I did all the research, all of them found, like, they all use the same fucking wording. Like, multiple websites, same fucking wording. The Indian word Villisca, which means evil spirit. I mean, a lot of them. There were a few websites that were woke enough to put the Native American word Villisca, which means evil spirit.
Well, that's progress.
Yeah, but no one bothered to find out the specific tribe.
Yeah.
It's not true. Like, yeah. It's not like Native Americans all speak the same fucking language either.
No!
And the sites don't even mention any of the indigenous tribes to that area. No follow-up on that. And I guess some people had
brown people.
Yeah, the red flag well, maybe instead of Indian, we'll put Native American. But it's like, why is it always in these fucking ghost stories where they're like, Native Americans should have told us, right?
I think it's because we white people feel fucking guilty as shit.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
We treated Native Americans, and so we're like, we want them to be the villains of all these stories because
somehow responsible.
Because because on some level we feel like they have it coming,
right?
You know, they need. It's time for us to get it. Like it's only a matter of time before the Native Americans rise up,
right?
Exact their revenge against us. You know,
of course.
It's so fucked up
because Native Americans know all mystical secrets of all the land everywhere and just kept it from white man because reasons. And now genocide isn't our ancestors' fault anymore. Poor Christian white men. They've always had it so hard.
Poor things.
I want to weep for them, but not have any tears.
It's just, now the Starbucks thing where they don't get to, they say happy holidays now.
I know.
They're so oppressed.
It's attack on Christianity.
These white Christians.
Poor
sorry, I shouldn't generalize, but there's a certain species of white Christian. That feel like everything is out to get them. And I'm
true.
like...
They're usually on Twitter.
Just because you're waiting for everyone to finally get woke enough to realize what a fuck you've been doesn't mean that everyone's after you.
Yeah. I just couldn't not mention that because it made me angry.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Well, but you do see this a lot in these stories where it is a common thread in American ghost folklore that Native American tribes, it's a burial ground, or it's this, and it's some weird racist way that we process, I say we, that white well-to-do Americans, I think, process the guilt of knowing, like, we kind of did some fucked up shit to become the nation that we are.
Right.
And we fucked over a lot of people that were already here. And let's empower them in retrospect to be like these, spiritual beings that have been fucking with us ever since.
Right.
So that we just on some level, we can just kind of balance the books a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, like on this, are we supposed to believe that they're like, oh yeah, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be amazing. Here's what we're going to do. Yeah. We're going to go, let's tell these white people that this town is called Villisca, but that it means like pleasant place. Let's just tell them that. Yeah, don't tell them what tribe we are. Just tell them we're Indians. It'll be great. They'll be funny. They're going to think that, but it really means evil spirit. Yeah. Like fucking what? That makes no sense.
I mean, I would love it if it were true.
I know, but
God knows Native Americans deserve.
And I looked it up.
That
I couldn't
kind
find...
of, like, they deserve to... But they wouldn't, yeah.
There's literally nothing to support this claim other than the claim online. And it is on multiple sites, and nobody has checked it. Are you trying to tell me that
not everything I read online is true?
No, it's not. I'm sorry.
Jamie, I don't even know what to say about that.
I just dropped it like it was hot.
He dropped it like a shit-covered rock.
I did. Okay, anyway.
So sorry. I'm sorry, Native Americans, for like how we still continue to fucking treat you like you're behind all the evil that we experience, because you're not. You're not, and we're sorry. I'm sorry. Jamie's sorry.
Even if you were, fucking good on you. Anyway, one of the reasons this mass murder has left such a lasting imprint is because no one was ever convicted of the killings. Today, historians seem to be made of three camps. Some believe it was State Senator Frank F. Jones, a Villisca resident, who possibly paid someone to kill the Moore family, or some ones to kill them.
And the children and the other children.
Yeah. The common belief is they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
That it was to take out the Moore family, to kill the Moore family, but those girls were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like if they hadn't spent the night that night. If they'd just not spent the night. And it was really hard on their family, too. Like,
I imagine.
Their mother was pregnant. She ended up losing a baby. It was really, really hard. I mean, for everybody, for this whole town. So they think it might, a lot of people believe it was Frank Jones behind it. Senator Frank F. Jones.
Why?
I'll get into that.
I'm just like, why?
Others
what
believe,
did they say?
This is why I knew it had to be luck, because there's so much information. Others believe it was Reverend George Kelly, who was less than mentally stable. And the last camp is the one I belong to, which is, they believe it was the work of someone totally unrelated to the town, and most likely one of the most prolific and elusive serial killers in the United States. So first, we got Senator Frank F. Jones. So Joe, when he was younger, he used to work for Jones in his store, but he decided he didn't want to work 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 6 days a week.
Slacker.
Yeah. Oh, well, lazy. So he left and started his own more successful business. And when he left, he took along with him some major accounts, including John Deere. And this is a farming community. John Deere's huge. I mean, I know John Deere. I think anybody who's ever been near a farm knows John Deere. So it's a big deal. There was also a rumor that Joe had an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law, who apparently did that a lot.
What, like the daughter-in-law had a lot of affairs?
She was a teacher, and when she got, I'm like, also, I kind of love her. Like everything about her. She was a teacher. She got married to this guy who was kind of under his father's thumb. Like, and
just kind of weak, spineless.
Yeah, and she.
Yes, father.
Yeah, kind of think of that. Like he was Donald Trump Jr.
So not the sort of person that would inspire a lot of sexual thoughts.
Probably not. I mean, I never saw a picture. I didn't do that research, but beyond that, she. And I think what it is just I'm always inspired by women in this time period and before any time period really, who refuses to settle for what she's supposed to do. She got married. She was supposed to be a matron. She was supposed to do all of these things. And she was like, fuck that. I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be who that is.
I'm going to live my life.
So she was known to have unchaperoned visitations from men all the time. And the problem was...
She was hysterical.
She was all the time. All the time. So at the time, when you made a phone call, it went through the switchboard.
Right, it was party lines.
Party lines.
Like the old
you think of the ladies with the little headphones on.
Put me through to...
Yeah. What
Pennsylvania
number?
4-5.
Yeah, exactly. What number will it be?
Surely.
And so they knew she was calling these men. And I mean, if it was me, give me some popcorn and let me tell everybody about it. I mean, obviously that's what happened.
This was the prototype for social media.
Yeah, right. Because she didn't care. She was like, I'm not going to be who you want me to be.
She's like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Arrest me for smoking?
Right. So, incidentally, Mr. Josiah Moore was one of those men who visited her the most. Now, there's no evidence there was an affair. But it's suspicious.
I mean, what evidence would there have been?
Right, that's true. And so they think that was evidence enough. Like he took his business from him, and he was more successful. And then he's sleeping with his son's daughter, his son's wife.
Son's wife, yeah.
But so were a lot of other people.
And it's like, why? And it's still like, why would you be like, okay, kill this whole family? Mm-hmm. Like, that's your answer? It seems that seems far-fetched because I'm like, why not just hire someone to like take him out at his store or on the way home from his store? Like, there's got to be many opportunities to take this guy out alone.
Couple of theories on that. One was they were going to kill just him, but then had to kill the rest of the family because they were there, which is asinine to me.
It's
Obviously,
bad
whoever
planning.
went in
They're
there killed the whole
fuck,
family.
I guess I gotta kill everybody now.
Right. And if it's like an assassination type thing, wouldn't you take some money to make it look like a robbery?
And this guy, and this guy was a senator. He wouldn't have had to do that.
He was also up for re-election.
Yeah.
Soon. So it was...
He could have done something. He could have ruined this guy in a number of ways. Like, he was in a privileged position to, like, close the guy's store down or whatever. Like, he could have, like... Murder seems
Extreme.
the least satisfying way to have dealt with an enemy like he felt he had in Josiah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? For a senator.
For a
like,
senator.
You know, it's like,
for someone with that kind
have
of power.
him brought. You know, like, whatever. Fuck him up. Like, accuse him of something. Put him behind bars. Like, make his life miserable. But axing him to death...
And his whole family.
And... some
One of the
visiting
other
children,
things,
like, that seems very unlikely.
Yeah.
That seems overkill. Now, I don't know the senator. He might have been a complete fucking sadistic piece of shit.
he did like to work people long hours.
That's true.
But and the other thing is, they think that maybe he hired someone to kill him, but that guy was like, I'm just going to kill everybody.
Maybe that's why
that
the
guy was
murderer
crazy.
stuck around in the house so long. He's like, I can't leave yet. My shift's not over.
Could be. Could be. I don't get off until 6.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't make jokes.
So you shouldn't make jokes. That's what this whole fucking podcast is.
That's true.
They know what they signed
I
up
still
for.
shouldn't, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Okay. So, obviously I'm biased because I don't think this was it is, but we'll keep going.
It does. I'm with you. It does seem like a stretch.
It seems a stretch.
And also, people love to be like, "Oh, I bet that guy in a position of power probably did it."
Probably did it. We hate him. And it's deeper than that too. But it was said that Joe and Jones hated each other so much they wouldn't even walk on the same side of the street. Like if they were walking towards each other, one of them would cross the street.
Wow.
So they wouldn't even
And
cross
this
on
is
the
a
side.
small town, so
Yeah, everybody knew that. However, Jones was 60. He was almost 60 at the time. So that's why they think he hired a hitman. In particular, William Mansfield. And they think he killed everybody else because of
because,
reasons.
like, no witnesses.
Maybe
whatever.
he was crazy. And since Mansfield had temporarily been a suspect in the murder of his wife, infant child, and in-laws, all by an axe, 2 years after the Villisca murders, Detective Wilkerson of the famed Burns Detective Agency believed Mansfield was a coked-up serial killer, and he was going to shut him down. Yeah. Seems very suspicious.
Well, that guy may have done it, but what's the
Right.
connection with the senator?
Right. So Wilkerson went undercover and everything. He was determined to take both of these men down. It was very dramatic. In fact, there was a serial killer working near the railroads in that area at the time because multiple murders had occurred in the Midwest. 10 months before the Villisca killings, 2 families who lived next door to each other in Colorado Springs were all killed in the middle of the night, being axed with an axe, right?
Oof.
2 weeks later, another family in Monmouth. It looks like Monmouth, but I want to say Monmouth.
It's probably Monmouth.
In Illinois, they were killed in the same fashion. And in Paola, Kansas, on June 5th, 1912, 4 days before the Villisca killings, a young couple had been murdered by a pickaxe or a mason's hammer while they slept. The killer had snuck in an unlocked window in some of these cases. The murders had striking similarities. Windows and mirrors were covered.
Oh.
Lamps were left at the foot of the bed and turned low without chimneys. A basin of water the murderer used to wash up was found in the kitchen. All were within a few miles of a railroad station. The seeming murder spree was only discovered because the police in Villisca requested help from the federal investigators who put the crimes together. They were like, I don't fucking know how to deal with this.
Yeah,
and
they'd never
help
had something
us.
like that happen before.
Yeah, and so federal investigators came in. They were like,
This reminds me a lot of that thing that just happened
and
down the
that's when they
railroad
put it
track a
together.
ways.
Right. So Wilkerson, in his attempt to take down Jones, and it's so aggressive against Jones, I feel like he had a personal vendetta for some reason, because he was on, but maybe he would just really believe.
Now, Wilkerson is the detective?
The detective.
Okay.
Detective Wilkerson, yeah.
And Jones was the senator. Okay.
Senator Jones, yeah. Wilkerson probably was behind this. A flyer went out a few days before the election that slandered Jones and cost him the election. It basically said, Frank Jones hired this man, and then had Mansfield's name and picture to murder the Moore family. And there were flyers like on everybody's doorstep.
That's so... I mean, that sucks.
Yeah.
For him. Because I don't think he did it. Like, what's the senator going to be like? He's going to turn to an aide and be like, find me an axe murderer.
Right.
Like, and they're going to, what, fucking put an ad out in the paper? Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find a guy like, I hear, I'm a big fan of your work in Illinois, and like, can you do that here? I mean, whatever,
Right.
because serial killer was not a thing back then. Like, we didn't really start conceiving of serial killers in the day.
No.
So, like, it's not like you would have looked at those murders and be like, you know what, we need another one of those.
We need a serial
to, like,
killer.
cover this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a stretch. So Wilkerson just had it in for Jones.
It seems that way. But maybe he just really believed that he did it, and wanted to take him down because he believed he was corrupt. But what happened is Jones lost the election and then sued Wilkerson for $60,000 for slander.
That's like $1 bazillion.
It's a quadrillion and $3 in today's money. And so what happened is this slander lawsuit basically turned into a murder investigation against Jones because Wilkerson is like, I can't slander it if it's the truth. So his attempt, he tried to prove that Jones had actually hired Mansfield to kill.
Wow. So he was like, fuck, in for a penny, in for a pound. I got to do this.
And he did that. He had a couple of women testify to the grand jury that they had overheard a few men discussing the murders before it happened. Their testimony, though, was not completely consistent. He also had a man who lived nearby the Moors testify that he had seen one of the men accused of talking about the murder walk into the Moore house in the evening. Like he'd walked up to the door and just walked in. But that particular witness also testified at the inquest right after the murder. And in that, he said he saw nothing out of the ordinary that night. So a few years later, all of a sudden, now he sees somebody going in. Why? Right? Why is that changed?
Okay.
And even because
he's like, it occurs to me now that what I said years ago when you first asked me when it was fresh in my mind was totally wrong, and I now totally remember this thing you want me to have seen.
Yeah, and I think what happened is he believed that Jones and Mansfield were behind it. And so he lied.
Thought, I'm going to lie, but I'm lying for a greater good.
For a greater good, probably, most likely. But even with all of the, wishy-washy evidence, Wilkerson was still found not culpable on the slander charge, and Jones was ordered to pay the detective's court costs.
Wow, so even though, that's odd. So
it's weird.
But Jones was never brought to trial for murder then, even though the slander case ended with it's true that Wilkerson called you a murderer, and it's true, it's not slander, but he was never taken to court for murder?
No.
Why?
Here's why. The other thing is a lot of the court documents were sealed, so people didn't know the whole truth. And that's why there's some misinformation out there as well.
Okay.
For example, in some of the things I've seen, you hear that Mansfield was accused of the murders, the grand jury convened, Jones got him off, and then he later axed his family to death. So did it inspire him to kill his family if he didn't do it? Or clearly he was the murderer because he killed his family with an axe. But the grand jury didn't even convene regarding him until 1916, 2 years after his family was killed and 4 years after his estranged wife and family, 2 years after his family's death and 4 years after the Villisca murders. And if you're going to believe little things like court records, Mansfield was nowhere near his estranged wife and family when they were murdered, and the case was cleared up when a former lodger who'd become obsessed with Mrs. Mansfield confessed to the obsession and the murders, and he went to prison for it.
Oh, okay. So
Mansfield didn't kill his family.
No.
Also, like we were saying, axe murders were not as uncommon back then. Like Frank Lloyd Wright's servant, who in 1914, so this is all the same time period, killed 7 people, including Frank Lloyd Wright's mistress and her 2 children. So for people who don't know this story,
that's
I have
fucked
no
up
idea.
Story. That's the whole Taliesin thing.
Frank Lloyd Wright left his wife and their 6 children for the wife of one of his clients.
Yep.
Pretty shady.
Yeah, he was...
And he basically just abandoned them. He went out of the country for a little while, came back. His wife refused.
Bye.
Yeah, his wife refused to grant him a divorce, and so he set up shop with his mistress and her 2 children. in this little town in Arizona. What's it called?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember
it starts with a T.
Well, Taliesin is the name of the house.
Of the house, yeah. So
I don't know that it's the name
house.
of the bill of the.
Yeah.
I can't remember now off the top of my head if it's the name of the town, but
Well, it's in
Taliesin is the
Arizona.
name of the house. But
Yeah.
it is in Arizona,
And
it's one of his more famous buildings.
yeah, because it was supposed to be basically the exemplary example of all of the things that
it was like the Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Yeah, all his favorite shit in one house.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
Taliesin and Falling Water, like the two big
Frank Lloyd Wright
houses.
Well, he had a servant who he was out of town. Frank Lloyd Wright was out of town. People were there for dinner. There were 9 people, and his servant locked them all in the dining room, poured fuel all the way around it, lit it on fire, and when people who managed to escaped, he was waiting for them with an axe. Everyone died except for 2 people, so he killed 7 people, including Frank Lloyd Wright's mistress and her 2 children.
Ugh.
They all died. Horrible. I can't believe I've never fucking heard that before.
Yeah.
Maybe because it comes into, you also have to know that he left his family, and it doesn't make him look glowing.
Yeah. Well, it just doesn't come up very much, but it's a tragedy that kind of followed him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. So we have, 3 different people right now killing 3 different families with an axe. So it wasn't like it didn't happen all the time, but it's not as uncommon. It was definitely the
time of the axe murder.
Yeah. But the other ones had so many similarities. It seems like it was the same person. And also,
they're covering the windows and the mirrors. That's an unusual.
Huge. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Mansfield alibi on the night of the Villisca murders checked out too. Payroll records put Mansfield in Illinois, 400 miles away from Villisca. Of course, the town was divided. Methodists supported Jones, but the Presbyterians, which is where the Moore family went, they were all against Jones. They thought he was guilty. And that was all because of Detective Wilkerson. The Presbyterians, Wilkersons, and the Moore family always believed that the senator and Mansfield were behind the murders. They thought Jones had paid him off to get him out.
Did they think Jones had a hand in getting the other guy to confess to Wilkerson's, the Mansfield's, the murder of his family?
No, I don't know if they thought that or not, but the thing is, a lot of that information was sealed, so they didn't know that somebody else was arrested and we don't know how. I don't remember how soon that was after the murders, but he was no longer a suspect at the time. They didn't know that. They didn't know that there were these payroll reports because those were sealed in the court documents. It was not made public, so it made it come really hard on him. These accusations. He was also had been arrested for drugs before, and they found no fingerprints in the house. So, and at the time they did do fingerprinting. It was the beginning of it.
Been on record.
Yeah. So they assumed whoever had done it must have been arrested before, and that's why they knew to wear gloves. That was one of their big things, is he's been in prison before, so he probably did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like, that's what you got? That's what you're going with? All right.
We had to, because no one else would think to wear gloves.
He would know that we fingerprint. And so maybe it wasn't as common knowledge.
Maybe.
But it still seems a stretch to me.
You know who else would know that fingerprinting was done? Wilkerson.
True.
Bum,
dun,
bum, bum. This is so good, Jamie.
Thank you.
This is so good.
Thank you. Okay. So Mansfield, turns out he sued the Burns Detective Agency and Detective Wilkerson, and he was awarded $225 for battery.
Which is like $1 million.
It's a quadrillion.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. And to be fair, Wilkerson was a bit of a nut. He also claimed that guy who had taken a piece of Joel's skull and put it in his shop, that he had done so to prove to Jones that Joe was dead. But there was the dead body that would prove that he was dead.
And
so
he hung out. Why?
Why?
And whoever it was went back to kill him some more. Right, it seems weird.
It seems weird.
It seems weird. That sounds like a lot of people gossiping, going, who did it? It's like that. They don't know shit.
He went because he was in on it. Yeah, no, that's bullshit. And there was a whole weird thing and the obsession thing, and it just doesn't seem plausible to me. And then next, we have Reverend George Kelly. Was a reverend. He was an English-born traveling minister, and he suffered a mental breakdown when he was a teen. He'd been arrested for peeping before, and he would ask girls to pose nude for him. And in 1912, that's not looked upon well. He left town immediately.
It's still not.
It's not, but it's more so then. More so then.
Yeah, but even then it was like,
Yeah.
And to pose, it's like you got to be like, the cameras were huge and bulky.
I know.
So that was.
Don't get cold.
He had to have been really into it.
Yeah. He also left town immediately after the murders. Now, he was a creepy guy.
Yeah, it fucking sounds like it.
Real fucking creepy. But he'd actually been invited to the children's program the night before, so it's not all that surprising that he would leave the next day. Reverend George Kelly, he actually confessed to the crimes, but his confession was coerced by the police and inconsistent with the evidence. After 2 trials starting in 1917, he was acquitted. The first one was a hung jury. Everyone but one person was voting to acquit him.
Why was he a suspect in the first place, apart from just leaving town the next day? That seems a stretch.
He was left-handed.
Okay.
And he left town right after.
Okay.
And he was a known pervert.
Okay.
Right. And so their assumption is he was, because of Lena and how she was found, that he wanted to look at Lena.
Oh.
And that he did it all to
But it was all circumstantial. They had no...
It wasn't even circumstantial. They just guessed.
Because I've heard the little bit that I know of this was that he, according to some witnesses, like on the train that he left town in, that he was talking about what had happened before it was general knowledge.
Right. And they did say that, but then you find out later that the people who said that
were full of shit.
Yeah, they were talking about much later.
Yeah.
It was much later that he talked about it. But that was one of the things that he talked about it ahead of time.
He was talking about, this thing, if you read it, it hadn't been in the paper yet.
Right.
So they were like, but it turned out to be completely just bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And because of the division of the town, different people said different things to convince the others of what was happening. He also, he was little.
He was little man?
He was little. He was 5'2" and barely over 100 pounds. So, is it possible for him to have swung the axe enough to kill everybody?
Well, it did take several axe swings to kill Joe.
It's
or
true.
Josiah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not... Again, I don't buy that he was either, but that just seems like a...
Well, a lot of people believe
something like this happens, like, people go, it has to be something, it has to be... Like, they're not satisfied if the culprit turns out to be someone that's obvious.
Right.
They're like, I want it to be like, oh, what if it's like a reverend?
Right.
What if it's like a senator? What if it's someone like really crazy connected? Like, we always want the most outlandish solution for, especially for a crime this horrible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, if it's just like, it's just some fucking vagrant who like killing people with an axe and was fucking crazy. That's weirdly anticlimactic for most people. So they really get invested in these explanations.
Well, and a lot of people believe too that Jones was trying to set Kelly up as a patsy to take the fall.
Of course he did.
Now, that may be true because Jones was tired of everybody looking at him. It's highly likely that happened.
Jones was trying to find a patsy, not because he did it, but because he was like, I just want the heat off me because, anyway, because I didn't do it, but people think I did, so fuck it, let's just blame this guy.
Right, exactly. In fact, Wilkerson hired the attorneys to defend Kelly.
Wow.
And Kelly was acquitted.
It's so fucked up because this one guy, this Wilkerson, had such a boner for Jones. Now, what did the left-handedness have to do with it?
They assumed whoever swung the axe was left-handed.
Okay.
Based upon, I guess,
based on the
angle
wounds,
or whatever.
Angle.
And
I'm trying to figure out how they would know that, but I guess
I don't know.
I think I'm trying to figure out I've swung an axe before, never to kill anyone that you know of, but but I think I would. Yeah, I guess I don't know.
That was the big thing.
I think I could do it either way.
Right. Who knows?
I don't know.
But that was their big thing, was that he was left-handed, and the killer was left-handed, and he left the next day. And he was this creepy pervert dude who had been arrested before for being a creepy pervert dude.
Creepy pervert dude.
Yeah.
But going from creepy pervert to murdering an entire family and the children of someone else's family with an axe. That's kind of...
Also, and he was acquitted. There wasn't enough evidence.
And he was a reverend, and we have to bear in mind that the whole superstitious thing about putting like blocking the mirrors and stuff, that didn't jive with Christian theology.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so that seems.
interesting,
I mean,
yeah.
as far as I know, it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe back then
the
lines were
two,
still
and
close, but
just because he was a reverend doesn't mean that he believed as everyone believed.
Yeah,
And professed the same faith. So who knows?
Right.
Interesting.
Fascinating. Here we go with the fascinating.
Okay, I'm ready. Wait, let me.
Last but not
Okay.
not least, in my opinion, is the one that I believe, the motherfucking transient theory. The town originally thought this was the case and actually sent people looking through barns and other houses to try and find him, but there was no luck. They could not find anybody. I lean towards this theory. I originally leaned towards this theory anyway, but after hearing about The Man on the Train by Rachel McCarthy James and Bill James, I was fucking sold.
Yeah?
Bill is a famed baseball, statistician.
Statistician. I think. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's statistician.
Yeah.
It's an ugly word.
Yeah, it is. He's a baseball statistician who invented sabermetrics. Without him, there would have never been a Moneyball, the book, which devotes a whole chapter to him, or the movie. Basically, he is big into statistics, patterns, and facts.
He's a numbers guy.
He's so good. He was, in 2006, he was considered one of the most, in the top 100 most influential people in the world. Big deal.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah. His daughter, Rachel, became his research assistant and went through something like 10,000 newspapers for this book.
Holy shit.
She found that murders of entire families at night had been happening for over a decade at this point. It happened in smaller, more rural towns and close to a train stop, usually the first stop past state lines. Mob mentality ran rampant through these towns, too, and a lot of innocent people were sentenced to hang or lynched after the mob got a hold of who they thought did it.
Ooh.
The Jameses built considerably on the work of graduate student Beth Klingsman, who knew the train stops were involved, and she also had knowledge of genealogy and crime scenes that the investigators at the time did not. To find the culprit, Rachel used Beth's work and looked at every murder she could find between 1890 and 1920. The father-daughter team looked for similarities and eliminated suspects the more they found out about the killer or killer's habits and patterns. When Rachel asked her dad what to look for in terms of his first murder, Bill replied, "Well, I don't exactly know. We have to work it back until we have a time frame where there doesn't appear to be a crime that is part of the series, a period of 2 years or more. Then, at the end of that, there's a crime that just isn't exactly right. It's what the man from the train wanted to do, but he didn't pull it off somehow." So
it's like a botched attempt.
It's like a botched attempt. A failed the first time. He didn't quite get it right, but then he perfected it afterwards, right?
It's his student thesis.
Right, exactly. So she came across a story that mentioned that the Worcester police had been in connection with the Massachusetts State Police to find and arrest one Paul Muller for the murder of the Newton family, a husband, wife, and their daughter, who had all been killed with an axe on the night of January 9th, 1897, 15 years before Villisca. He had been working for the family and last was seen heading towards the train station close to 1 o'clock in the morning. No trace of him has ever been heard from or seen since. They don't know a ton about Paul Muller, but they do know he was highly intelligent, physically repulsive, which I enjoy. He was, yeah, I know, but maybe that's why he covered the mirrors. He was just so ugly. He didn't want to look at himself.
See myself.
He was ethnically German and spoke German fluently. He was a short, powerful man who worked as a lumberjack.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so far all the boxes are getting checked.
The murders didn't just follow the train stations. They also followed logging season.
Oh.
Unlike most serial killers, he did not stick to his own race, though. Black families were murdered along with white families, which is why some people don't believe this particular theory, because it's out of the norm. But
some serial killers do cross over.
The Jameses had a more difficult time finding records of the black families that had been murdered because, of course, the newspapers didn't cover their stories as much. Yeah. But the similarities of the crimes are still there. usually the blunt side of an axe. He often set the house on fire afterwards, which when you think about that, he left those lanterns on with no chimney on it. So...
Which is a fire hazard.
It's a fire hazard. Did he set it on fire? Or did they accidentally get on fire? But
the fire just petered out.
It's certainly not fire safety.
Right. So maybe he intended to set fire to the house and just it didn't take?
Or maybe he never meant to set fire to the house and just sometimes did.
I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? I mean, this is all conjecture. But he never stole money. In fact, Bill thinks he would leave his own money at the house. They would find money just there.
What?
On the house.
Like, thanks for a good time.
Kind of, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
There was usually...
Like, that's the most twisted version of the tooth fairy myth I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, it gets worse.
Oh!
There was usually a prepubescent girl among murdered family members who had been assaulted post-mortem.
Oh, God.
In the book, the Jameses state that the coroner... for the Villisca house, told one of the private investigators that, although it was not part of public record, Lena Stillinger had actually been sexually molested after she was killed.
They did tend to leave details like that out back in the day.
She was already dead. What's it going to do? It's just going to make it worse for everybody.
Right. You know? And a lot of times these details were left out of print because even then, police and detectives had to deal with a lot of people coming forward claiming to be responsible who weren't. And so they would misrepresent details so people would come in and give them the details they knew they read in a paper, but oh, you clearly weren't there and didn't do it. So sometimes, but there was a lot of, there was a murder like that in my hometown where a girl was killed and it only came out much later to be a matter of public record that she had been sexually assaulted as well. And that was, that detail, the holding that detail back is what helped him finally catch the guy who did it. So it's common practice, and I wonder if that was their motivation.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like,
or if the guys or the people who investigated just couldn't even bring themselves to consider the possibility because it was already so horrible they didn't want to add to it, and the family would have been. I mean,
as devastated as the family was. Do you tell? The mother who lost her baby too.
Yeah.
But,
oh God. Yeah. God, that's awful.
It's terrible. They also believe that he killed with one whack. And that the doctors, they're the ones that believe the doctors just had never seen what a really heavy axe bludgeoning one whack would do. And so they assumed it had to have been more than one, which is why I think it was one hit. He goes to the children's room. He goes back to the parents' room because he has to, because someone's still alive. I'm still standing by, he probably, the whack probably didn't kill Josiah that he thought, and maybe he heard him groaning and was like, we've got to go finish that out. Yeah, exactly. That's what makes me think of. And because it was his shoe, Josiah's shoe that tumbled off. It was Sarah's shoe. Sarah, never mind. Yeah. That is neither here nor there, I guess, but still, it was I think he went back because he was like, let me go double check. Yeah, or they were moaning or something. And I keep saying it was Joe that needed it, but it might have been. It's just because Joe was so brutalized more than everyone else because they thought he was the focus. But so the guy had to come back and do it again. Yeah. Oh, that's so fucked. That detail bothers me the most because it's like, oh fuck, I want to go downstairs and kill the kids, and fuck, I gotta make a pit stop real quick to finish this one off, who I thought was already dead. Yeah. What those children must have been thinking while they're hearing all this going on upstairs. If they heard it. That just... Oh. Because if you have the train going by, they're sound asleep. Yeah, I guess. They've had a big day. But if a train's going by... I'm telling you... if the girls were in this house... I hope they didn't hear a thing. I hope they didn't see it coming. But one girl downstairs had the defensive wound. Right? Yeah, she woke up probably during. Yeah. Oh, God. Ugh. The thing is that I keep thinking is if the girls were here, actually, Serafina in particular, she's 8. Nothing will wake her in the middle of the night. Nothing. You can get her to walk and move, but she will have no memory of it. She's and Callista's the same way. They are out. They're you can scream and they won't wake up. But can you imagine, you're in bed, with your husband and suddenly, or your wife or whatever, and you can. Even if it's only one whack, that shit's gotta wake you up when the other person is being murdered. Right. But I think you have a lumberjack. Those swings come fast. Yeah. So maybe you wake up, by the time you wake up and look or whatever,
Yeah, it's
It's
too
too
late.
late.
Oh, Jesus. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so fucking... That's fucked. That
The
fucks
other
with me.
thing that really fucks with me, too, is I wonder if Lena had not been the target the entire time. Because it was the prepubescent tween that got them.
And that was what he was really into.
And so
This fucking guy.
maybe it wasn't that the Stillinger girls were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but that the Moore family was.
You think he was maybe stalking?
Yeah, he
The
didn't
Stillinger
stalk.
girl?
I think they believe he stalked a lot in the earlier part, but he would have had to have noticed the kids, right? He would have had to pick out the girl
Yeah.
to see it or find at least one. And since she seemed to be the focus of his attention, did he follow them to the house and sneak in a window that was unlocked and then just lock everything once he had finished everything, you know?
Well, didn't Josiah lock the doors at night?
Yeah, but they don't know for sure that everything was locked up because it was locked when they got there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean somebody didn't sneak in a window and then shut the window and lock it.
That's true.
You know, that's one of the things that I wonder. And then, you know, coincidences being what they are, the same Joe and Sarah being both of the parents' names. And you think it could have just as easily been their family if this is the case. If they had gone home that night, instead of staying with the Moores, would it have been her entire family instead of the Moore family? If that's the case. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, it's really, really fucking disturbing.
That makes me think about, I had a friend growing up who moved here from L.A., or was it San Francisco? Wherever Richard Ramirez was killing. One of his MOs, or one element of his MO was like the houses were usually painted yellow, or like a yellowish color, like egg white or off white or something.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine growing up, the girl I actually dated for a little while in high school, that's how long ago this was, and she grew up there, and around that time that happened, she was a little girl living with her parents in a neighbor's house that lived next door to someone that got murdered by him.
Oh.
And they heard the screams, and they were the ones that called the police.
Oh my God.
And she says that a little boy came next door. The next door neighbor's youngest son, who was like 3 or 4, like a toddler, came over to wake them up in the middle of the night asking for ice cream because his mother, who was dying, had told him to go next door and get the neighbors and said, if you do that, you'll get ice cream. And so she remembers, my friend remembers waking up to all this happening, and they were in a house that was painted the same color as their neighbors. So it was just like
easily been
there, but for the grace of whatever.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just, it just makes you think, you know.
Fucked up.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
Another interesting tidbit is that the murders stopped not long after Villisca. But in 1922, 6 members of the Gruber family were killed on their Bavarian farm. Not everything was exactly the same as the previous murder, like the killer stayed longer than usual. But there were enough striking similarities, like the money being spread around, like the mirrors being covered, all of that stuff, that the Jameses believe that he should be looked into as a viable suspect because it was never solved either. They think possibly that Miller started to feel the heat and he fled to Germany. He was German and did speak German fluently.
And then was like, oh, cool.
And then
I'm
he
gonna
was
kill
just-
this family here.
Yeah.
While I'm back home in the homeland, I might as well.
Keep it up. Yeah. And, you know, the other thing that
But it's certainly not looking good for this guy.
No, and that's...
He's the most convincing suspect.
Same. That's how I feel. Based on all of the information.
Well, man, that's some
that they've
fucking good research.
It really is.
That this statistician and his daughter have done.
Also, the other thing that made me think of was that when we were talking about what was he doing, that he would have been disturbed. That he would have lost track of time. And if it was Lena was the target, that would explain it.
Oh, God.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's awful. But unfortunately, it makes a lot of sense when you see the whole
so
picture.
Fucked up, because she was downstairs. She was one of the last that he killed.
She was the last one he killed.
So he worked his way up to her. Like, she was the denouement, so to speak, of...
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fucked up.
It's really fucked up.
So fucked up. Whatever happened to this guy?
Nobody knows.
No one knows?
Nobody knows.
God, I want him to have, fallen into a wood chipper.
I know, that would be amazing. But nobody knows. Like, this guy, the Mueller guy, after that first killing in 1897, never heard from again.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
they tracked the crimes that were similar and would kind of...
This is where...
Okay, they would look at these crimes, and these are by the axe, and okay, this one's different. It's too different. Like, it wasn't in the middle of the night. Or, okay, this one, so they put it together that way and have a huge series. And the book goes through a lot of these murders. So, check it out.
Damn.
But we're going to move on now.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, so we're going to fast forward to 1994. The owners of the house, Darwin and Martha Lynn, who also co-own the Olson Lynn Museum in downtown Villisca, they restored the home to what it would have looked like in 1912. They bought it. Darwin was just kind of like, yeah, sure. I think they were going to get rid of it and bulldoze it. And he was like, he gave him a real lowball offer and was like, call me by the end of the day or something like that. And they were like, okay, it's yours. And he was like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. So they got it. They completely renovated, restored it. That's a word. Sure. They took all of the plumbing and electric additions over the years out of it, as well as used pictures and courtroom documents to restore the exterior and place period-appropriate furniture exactly where it had been located on the night of the murders. A lot of research. But thanks to their efforts, the house was placed on the National Registry of Historic Places in 1998.
Okay.
The Lynns also opened up the home for tours. Day tours are available Tuesday through Sunday between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. for $10 per person. Adults.
That's not bad.
It's cheaper for children and senior citizens.
Senior discount.
You are going to want to do this. I'm telling you this right now. You can currently stay overnight at the Villisca House for $428 for a group of up to 6 people. Anybody more is $78 or $75 per person, but they say don't bring more than 10 people. It's not a big house.
Let's do it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Let's do it, Jamie. Come on.
Okay.
You, me, Jack Brandon.
Don't you want to hear what everything is?
Fuck yes, I do.
Darwin has since passed away, but Martha still owns the house and runs the ghost tours. It became famous for its hauntings because of word-of-mouth experience that started to appear on YouTube, Travel Channel, and then made it to the most terrifying place in America. After that came Paranormal State, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Lab, Dead Files, and more. A 2004 documentary called Villisca, Living with a Mystery, produced by Fourth Wall Films, does not believe the house is haunted at all. They say they experienced nothing during their filming of the house and take particular offense with Scariest Places on Earth for making up images of the victims, making up a newspaper article that never existed, and other false information, even though Fourth Wall provided them with the facts and actual images.
The fuck?
Yeah, it was pretty shitty. They claim there were not even rumors of the house being haunted before 1999, when a paranormal investigation team from Nebraska just declared it haunted. They also claim to have contacted all of the owners of the property from 1936 until 1993, and none of those owners say it was haunted. It was rented a lot, though, and the renters, all of whom, of course, cannot be found or contacted, tended to rotate fairly often. Darwin claimed a few previous renters had come to visit the house, and they reported to him that they did believe that the house was haunted. Martha says she has hundreds of pages of people's experiences over the years. She seems to agree with a lot of paranormal investigators that the reason the hauntings picked up in the 90s is because of the restoration in 94.
Well,
took it all back.
That seems to be a running theme with hauntings. Fuck with their shit or try to bring things back to the way they were, and the ghosts are like, okay,
right,
cool, we're here now.
Oh, you wanted us? We're here. Darwin told a story about Ross Moore, Josiah's brother and the executor of his will. Yeah. He put up a sign eventually because he couldn't get anybody to rent it. So eventually he put up a sign in front of the house saying that if somebody would rent the house, they could have it for free for 6 months, since nobody would move it. A local resident, John Caseman, and his wife, Allie, and their 3 daughters moved into the house. The next day, John fixed up a room in the barn and lived in the barn the rest of the time that his family lived there. I couldn't find necessarily anything to back up this particular claim. Yeah. But Darwin was a historian.
Okay.
He went to high school in Villisca. He loved the city. He's a resident, and it may have been something that he heard by word of mouth. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but I believe he believed that.
Okay.
From what and from all appearances, he seems like a good old boy who's got a hankering for history. That's just the kind.
I feel like I know the type.
Yeah.
Right.
He just likes it. He knows everything about the town. There's always this old guy that lives in your small town, and he knows everything that ever happened in the town and who their names were and what streets they lived on and what their yes, exactly. This is the kind of guy he seems to be. For all intents and purposes, they restored the house for historical purposes before the ghost hunting phenomena struck really hard in the 2000s. That said, the house...
That is kind of when ghost hunting shows and
it got real big.
Like sightings and ghost hunters and all that began really taking off.
Yeah. But it's not like ghost stories or horror movies or anything like that were out of fashion, because I have never not told ghost stories my entire life.
That's true.
You know,
but this cottage industry of like ghost hunting shows. They were new.
They were new at the time. Yeah. And you know, I think the fourth wall people think that that's what it was. It was just because of these shows or whatever that it drew the attention. I think they really believe that it is disrespectful to what actually happened, which is why I wanted to spend so much time on the murders and what actually happened.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
The haunting stuff. Because you gotta know.
It's easy to lose sight of the story that we know is true, like the murders, and to kind of get lost in the ghost story part of it, which, you know, is contagious.
Well, and then you have people who are going there that are like, "Ooh, are you here?" or yell at me, or, you know, "Oh, were you the murderer?"
God,
blah, blah, blah.
Leave him alone.
Yeah. Exactly. And they do a fair amount. They do pretty well.
Yeah.
They had, I think, 9 overnights scheduled next month.
Damn.
So they book pretty heavy, and it's doing decent. It's doing decent.
Well, I want to go.
It's
I
worked.
want to see if I experience anything.
Yeah. The other thing the fourth wall folks did, they underhandedly shaded the lens. The website for the house that the Lens own is called the official website for the Villisca Axe Murder House. On Fourth Wall's website, though, it states, although there is no official Villisca Axe Murder website, there is, after all, no governing historical body to make such a declaration or designation. You will find that Villisca.com is the best and most comprehensive source for historical information related to the infamous 1912 case. It's like, what the fuck is that? Like, it's just shady.
That's really...
How could you can't say that. There's, like, no governing. Like, you can't do it.
There's no governing body.
Right, you don't know. And then the other thing is, it's not Villisca.com. It's VilliscaIowa.com. Like, they even leave the wrong website.
What? They're such assholes.
It's shitty, right?
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I mean, they're Emmy Award nominated, you know, they're filmmakers, and they do a good job, but
that's some underhanded bullshit.
I didn't think that was fair.
That is not fair.
Yeah.
That would bug the shit out of me.
Right, because people wouldn't even know really about this house had they not restored it. It would have been bulldozed. It would be gone if they hadn't done it.
It'd be totally gone. It'd be a fucking footnote to history.
Yeah. One of the other claims, too, is that you can take, you see this a lot, they take the original axe into the house to call forth the spirits, the yada, yada, yada. But the truth of the matter is the axe was used as evidence in a trial. You can't just go fucking get it. I think it's on the wall of Villisca's, it's displayed in Villisca City Hall. And it has the exhibit number on it.
Yeah. So it's not like you just go in and be like, hey, can I check this axe out for like just an evening? Like, they don't do that.
No. And so, yeah, if it doesn't have those numbers on it, it's not.
That's my big problem with so many ghost hunting shows like that, is so many of them do sensationalized stuff, and they really hurt the credibility of the actual stories, because I believe in this stuff. I mean, as do you, but I don't believe shit I see on television anymore. No. I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. I don't believe in that EVP. That's bullshit. Like, it makes it so difficult to believe. I used to think the Queen Mary was really haunted, and it may be still, but it's things have come to light in the past decade or so that a lot of the stories most of the stories that people know come from shows that just made shit up.
Like the scariest places on earth.
Yes.
You know, they didn't even use the real pictures, and it's like, there are real fucking pictures. Why are you not... Anyway. Yeah.
And especially in the case where there is, like, not to go down that rabbit hole, but like in the case of the Queen Mary, if anyone's suddenly really pissed that I just said, I'm not saying the Queen Mary's not haunted, because there was a very, very convincing episode of Unsolved Mysteries, where they had a very well-regarded parapsychologist tape record something and caught some interesting stuff there, and that's never been disproved. But what I'm saying is that there's plenty of good, reliable evidence of these things, but it gets ignored because it doesn't it doesn't kowtow to the horror movie aesthetic people want now.
Right.
Like, well, that's a good piece of evidence, but it's just evidence. We need something that's going to scare them.
Right.
We need something with a jump scare, or a creepy
we make 'em
soundtrack,
watch.
or we
Which
need to
is
see
kind of
someone
what-
get possessed by an
Yeah.
evil spirit or pretend to be.
That's kind of what I like about the BuzzFeed ones, is because
They're
shit
just-
doesn't happen. It's
Yeah,
very
they just
rare
kind of
that stuff
go,
happens.
and the one guy is a total skeptic.
Yeah, doesn't
and the
believe
other
in
guy
anything.
is probably way too much of a believer,
I know.
and they kind of balance
It's
each
a
other out
beautiful
nicely.
balance. It's so good. I love
Yeah.
it. They go to the Queen.
They are my
That's pretty
favorite
funny.
of the
Yeah, me
shows
too.
that I watch.
Okay, so the haunting.
So the haunting. Okay, so the haunting.
People have seen shadows, full-bodied apparitions, in particular, a little girl. They've heard footsteps, heard voices, mostly the voices of children. They've heard growling, gasping, moaning, which supports the somebody was still alive theory. Toy balls will roll back and forth. People have been touched. Their clothes have been tugged. Doors will open and close on their own. People feel sick. They'll have backaches, neck aches, stomach aches. People become emotional. There is poltergeist activity. Things will stack and arrange themselves on their own.
It's starting to sound like the warning labels on the back of medicines.
I know. Yeah, right?
May cause poltergeist activity and
Yeah.
nausea.
All kinds of shit happens in this house. One of the biggest things is on November 7th, 2014, Robert Larson Jr. of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, arrived with his mother and stepfather for recreational paranormal investigation of the Villisca house. He was alone in the northwest bedroom around 12:45 a.m., which is when a lot of people assume the murders happened, while the family was looking around inside. He called to them over their two-way radio, and when they went to the room, they found him stabbed in the chest by a pocket knife, apparently a self-inflicted wound.
What?
He was taken to a nearby hospital and then airlifted to Omaha. Larson recovered but will not comment further out of respect to his family.
Whoa.
Now,
Whoa.
Larson had frontal lobe damage caused by several mini strokes, and he had severe calcification of his vertebra and severe arthritis of the spine. His house was about to be foreclosed on because he could no longer work, and his wife and their 3 children would soon be homeless. Incidentally, because of the attention he received after the stabbing, a fundraiser helped keep the family out of immediate foreclosure. The stabbing could have been due to depression, an attempt to get attention, or even sue for damages, or possibly his brain injury could have made him more susceptible to some force within the house.
Yeah.
I lean more towards it's maybe attention or depression or something like that. It was the time that most people assume the murders happened, not the time they actually happened.
Right.
So it just, I mean, it could be, but it's more likely.
Energy. I mean, it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean that some force or spirit kind of overtook him, but it could be that, if he's already going through all this shit and he goes into a house like this and spends the night, it could be that just like the thought of like, oh, these poor people that got murdered here can begin to kind of confirm this worldview that life is not worth living.
Right.
And maybe he decided, well,
That was
what
it.
the fuck, I'll just do it. I mean, I don't know.
It's a real sad story.
It's so sad. I'm
and so
glad he
that's the thing.
survived it.
He survived,
and,
yeah.
And it wound up turning into some, at least keeping his family out of foreclosure for a little while.
Yeah.
But man, that's fucked up.
It's really fucked up. One of the tour guides has recounted being on a tour and hearing footsteps coming up behind her upstairs when she knew everyone else was downstairs. She screamed and ran into one of the bedrooms, and one of the guys on the tour came up to check on her, and he told her he had heard the footsteps as well. She also reported to her hair being ruffled by something, as well as being touched inappropriately.
Oof.
A teacher told a story about a little girl she took on a school trip to the house, which apparently is a thing. It seems so fucked up to me, but
Let's go see the murder house.
they take kids to... and the girl had a nightmare a few weeks before going. And I don't know if she was a little girl. She was a girl. She was described as a girl. Either way, in this dream she had before they went a few weeks before, she was in the house in the children's room on the second floor, and there was a Raggedy Ann doll on the bed, and when she moved closer to the doll, it turned its head and smiled at her.
Ugh.
Of course, she woke up screaming. I want to scream. And she told her teacher about it because she was worried, and the teacher told her everything was fine. Everything would be okay. Once they got there, the class split up into groups. One went upstairs, one stayed downstairs. A few moments later, the teacher who was downstairs, who heard screaming coming from upstairs, when she went towards the stairs, the little girl met her there, having just run down the stairs. Apparently, everything about the room in her dream was exactly the same as the actual room, down to the Raggedy Ann doll on the bed. It didn't turn and smile at her, but she didn't give it time. She was like,
I was
fuck
like,
you!
nope, I've seen this story before. I'm leaving.
So Prism Paranormal is on YouTube.
Okay.
And I haven't looked at a lot of their stuff, but I did look at some of their Villisca stuff, and they go there quite a bit. And normally, I'm not a believer in a lot of the things I see on YouTube. My mom is, though. You can convince her of anything if it's on YouTube. But sorry, Mom, if you're listening. She knows I feel this way.
Well, what's on YouTube?
Yeah. So, or the
She'll be like, I am. Because I said it online.
Yeah.
So it must be true.
It must be true. But the Prism Paranormal has some of the most convincing EVPs I have ever heard. Ever.
Really?
I am not a big believer in EVPs.
I'm not
You know
either.
this
I think
about
they're
me.
bullshit.
It's now, I don't think that you don't like. I believe that people capture sounds.
I do think it's possible, but I think most of the ones that we hear are total bullshit.
Yeah.
Or that what they think they hear is like, that's not. I
The
didn't
house
get that
settling
from that.
or moving or
I
whatever.
don't hear the words they think they're hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's
or
a
once
muffle.
they say, look, it sounds
it's
something, and it could
clearly
be a
muffled.
voice, but I'm like, what the
Is it
fuck?
pipes?
Right.
Rustling? Is it the plumbing? It's an old house. Of course it wouldn't be the pipes in this house because there are no pipes in that house. But these are very fucking convincing. They don't appear to just be pareidolia, which is the patterns, recognizing patterns, and so you hear words. I would check them out. Definitely check them out. They have a compilation of the best ones of the children in the house from 2004 to 2014. And they even include a few different paranormal investigators with similar sounding EVPs from different investigations to show that these are not phenomena with only one group. It happens to a lot of investigators.
Okay.
Most of the times, before you hear the voice, you hear a snap in the recording, like an electrical glitch. Then, in one of them, they say it's something like, he's coming in here, Paul, and it's creepy as fuck when you think about it like that. It's creepy, but they wouldn't have known because they were all asleep. So it doesn't really go with the facts.
Yeah.
So who knows if that's what it says. But you can hear what sounds like a child's voice and then clearly Paul. It's real fucking creepy. And a lot of them are creepy, but it sounds to me like kids playing. Most of the children's one. It's in the back. They're giggling. There's some laughing. It sounds like kids are playing. And that's what we're hearing. Even the ones, there's one where the investigators are outside and they're recording, and from the inside of the house you can hear screaming. It sounds like kids screaming.
Oh, God.
Really terrible when you think about it in context and blah, blah, blah. But I also know that kids scream all the fucking time. When they
true.
play, it sounds like they're being murdered because they're screaming. And that to me, it just sounds like kids are playing inside the house.
Okay.
A lot of people are really creeped out about it, but when I kind of distance myself from what happened in the house and just listened, it just sounds like kids playing.
Okay.
So let's check it out. See what you think. Let me know what you think.
I will.
And you guys listening, let me know what you think. But let's see what else. Johnny House. He's one of the tour guides who actually lives next door in Mary Peckham's house. And I believe he still is there doing tours. He's been doing it for a very long time. He thinks that there's more in the house that doesn't belong there, that they have several different types of hauntings. He believes most of the activity doesn't actually have anything to do with the murders. He also says if you stay in the house too long over a period of time, your mood would start to change because it's happened to him.
I believe that.
Yeah. He doesn't really know who's haunting the place or what's haunting the place. He hopes it's not the family, of course, but he does feel like whatever there is there knows it's putting on parlor tricks and enjoys doing so. If you push, the house pushes back. You stir the pot, it'll give you something to stir. He's been followed by spirits from the house, and the activity was so bad he had to stop doing his personal investigations on the house. At one point, I have goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
At one point, his daughter kept talking about Hattie. Hattie this, Hattie that. A woman named Hattie.
Okay.
He thought, okay, maybe this is like a family member, right?
Right.
Maybe this is like a great-grandmother somewhere that's watching our daughter. I don't know. He finally asked her who Hattie was. She replied, that's the woman upstairs. Okay, so.
Okay,
yeah, the dogs barked and it.
That was perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Leila, thank you.
He asked around. There's no Hattie in his family. So he started to do a little research and he found out that Mary Peckham, who had been like a grandmother to the Moore children, she had a nervous breakdown shortly after the murders. Some people wonder if she actually heard what was happening and couldn't live with it, but I think that probably just the whole thing was fucked up and messed up, you know.
I mean, I think what happened just was enough.
Yeah. Her family moved her to Montana to hopefully that a change of scenery would help her recover, but it didn't work. She ended up dying of anemia, complications of anemia from the nervous breakdown somehow, in December of 1912, the same year, 6 months later, she died. Her husband survived her, as did her 2 children, Ernest and Hattie, who got the house next door.
Oh.
Do you have goosebumps now?
Oh, yes, I do.
Good. It's so good.
The woman upstairs, and this is his daughter had no idea, like, wouldn't have known that.
To her. But he had people spend the night that, like, one guy woke up and there was an angry woman looking at him. And, okay, this is when I lost all control and went real deep.
Oh, God, yes.
Hattie was 40 at the time of the murders. She taught high school in Villisca, and she was a proud member of the Presbyterian Church as well, as, you know, the one that the Moore family was a member of. Interesting tidbit about Miss Hattie. Her first husband at the time died suddenly in 1918 at 57. Within this same year, she was remarried to the preacher at the Presbyterian Church. Her first husband was Dr. Huff, the doctor that went in with Dr. Cooper right after the murder.
Oh.
Her second husband was the preacher.
Kelly? No. Oh, okay. No.
Mr. Ewing that went in. He was the Presbyterian preacher.
Okay.
Both of her husbands were some of the first people in that house.
Oh, shit.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
small town, and maybe it's not as weird as I think it is.
But that's the coincidence, like, both of her husbands.
The getting married within the year. Hey, Hattie.
Hey.
But also,
but
it's known to happen.
Well, yeah, especially back in those days, a woman didn't want to be left alone because she had no power to do anything.
Also the news articles back then. Today, obituaries, you don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Usually, you don't know unless they ask you to donate to something, and then you're like, oh, that's really what it was. Back then, it was like, so let me tell you what happened.
Here's what they were wearing, and here's what the wounds look like.
Dr. Huff had gone to his country house, like their ranch or whatever, and he was doing some work, and he didn't feel good. He had a stomach ache. He thought it was indigestion, but it turns out it wasn't, because he took medicine. He felt better, but then he started to feel bad again, and he sat on the chair and he died. Like, it's just like so out there about what happened. It's crazy. He died at 57, I believe.
This is the first husband?
The first husband, Dr. Huff, and then she married Mr. Ewing. And so Mary, it makes sense why Mary would have contacted both of them. Of course, the Presbyterian preacher, she would have called her preacher to tell him what had happened. Right. Dr. Huff was her daughter's husband, so she would have called her daughter, I'm sure, to say, oh my God, this has happened. Hattie or Mary sent their husband to go to the house to help.
That's what you did.
Yeah. It's just like this tiny,
we would still do if that happened.
Tiny little mystery that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And then it was like, that's who that was. Because I was like, who is this Dr. Huff guy? And why when they went back, is there a doctor and the preacher there, like, randomly?
Doctor? Like, that's,
Yeah.
But that makes sense now. Like, you're a doctor, go help.
Yeah. And the name Hattie, too. Johnny's most frightening experience happened one day while he was walking through the house before a day tour. He saw a red toy ball in the doorway of the kids' room that had not been there moments before. He tossed it under the bed and began making one of the kids' beds. That is when he heard a light knocking on the closet door.
Thanks for the sound effect.
Yeah, you're welcome. He called out hello. Didn't expect an answer because he works in the fucking Axe Murder House, right? Nobody answered. He was in the house alone. He knew it. Continues making the bed. Not long later, on the closet door. And the closet door is like inches from the bed. So he goes and he opens the closet door. And in the middle of the closet is a fucking porcelain doll.
No.
I know. It's the worst, scariest thing I've ever heard.
Nope. No.
It's the porcelain doll part. I fucking hate dolls. I hate dolls the way you hate clowns. I hate dolls.
And I don't. Dolls are fine with me, but when they're I don't like it when they're in places they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't put you in the closet. Why the fuck are you standing in my closet looking at me? Stop looking at me. It's weird.
Yeah. And he said it fucked with him so much. And I mean, had several experiences, but that particularly fucked with him so much. He did all of his tours outside. Like, he'd give all the history outside and then be like, go inside.
Have fun. I'm staying out here.
He said he went upstairs to, like, recapture his manhood for a very short amount of time. And was like, cool, hey. And then he left. Oh, God. Okay, so again,
That's a great story.
I know. Oh, God. There are all kinds of videos online about this house with all kinds of supernatural evidence. Some of it looks real and some of it looks like it's bullshit.
This is typical of any place that's got that much activity.
But there are so many videos. You could spend days watching them all. I think that it is haunted. Most likely, I think it is haunted. But I don't think it's what people expect. I don't think the killer is there, and that's what a lot of people do. It's like, why would he fucking be there?
Well, who knows? I mean, but it could be. It feels to me like
maybe that energy might
perhaps
be there.
like when something like that happens, there's an energy that draws spirits,
right?
So it could
Portal
be just
type
it could be like a little,
but
a Grand
I don't
Central
think,
Station sort of place.
Yeah, people try to get him to reply like he's an intelligent spirit. Johnny believes that there's intelligent, that there's residual. He thinks there's a bunch of different stuff there. Mm-hmm. I don't believe the killer would be there. Out of all the places he could be, there's a lot. Maybe he's divided amongst them all, but I do think
that crazy
whatever
idea, like when one dies, you could be several types of ghosts at once,
right? Or like cursed to be several types of ghosts.
Yeah.
But I do think whatever's there, it seems like they know that they're putting on a show and they like it. Because they do.
That's common for especially poltergeist activity. They seem to have like a sense of humor. Like they want to do things that get attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So that
is a great story, and I'm glad we decided.
Axe Murder House.
I am glad we decided to give the entire episode to that because there were so many twists and turns to explore that I didn't know. I thought I knew that story. And thank you for just throwing in a little bit about Frank Lloyd Wright.
You're welcome.
I love that little tidbit. I love that little tidbit.
So, thank you guys for listening. That is all for today's episode of Ghoul Intentions. I need another drink. That was stressful.
I know. I'll make us some.
Okay, so last week we asked on our Facebook page and our Twitter for your opinion on what we were doing, how we were doing. What did you like our content?
What did you want to see
more of? Do you want more of something, less of something? What was it? And so thank you everybody who responded. We want to make sure that you guys are getting what you want. So we do have a surprise coming this week. If you have not yet subscribed, subscribe.
Yes. Yes. Do it.
That is the best way to find out. Also, on top of subscribing, follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on
the Facebook.
And stay tuned for an announcement. We'll keep you updated there as well.
Yes. And of course, you can go to ghoulintentions.com for links to all those social media sites. And to listen to previous episodes and to shop at our store. Yes.
Oh my God, those pictures.
We do see your pictures, by the way, and we love them.
We love the pictures of you guys on our shirts.
So nice. And most importantly, you can go to the site to submit your own ghost story for consideration to be read on a future episode as the cold opening. You'll find that in the menu under Submit Your Ghost Story. It's very, very easy now.
Super easy. Just go to the main menu. Yeah.
And we want to thank everyone for being so supportive and helping the podcast grow. Jamie and I have such a ball doing this, and we couldn't do it without you guys. You are absolutely amazing. If you haven't yet given us a review, we would really appreciate it. It really helps us out. It helps the podcast continue to grow and matter and really kind of make an imprint so that we continue to the upward trend that we've been experiencing a lot.
Yes.
And so if you'd please just go stop by iTunes or whatever platform you use to listen to it and give us a rating and a review, that would be amazing, and we would be extraordinarily grateful.
Please
so help
do
us,
that.
Help us spread the word about the podcast, because
tell your friends, tell your enemies. Why not?
We're sharing good stories here. Yeah, tell your enemies. We like to scare the shit out of them for you.
We feel like we're really creating kind of a community, and it's super fun, and we just really appreciate everybody and everything that you've done.
Yes,
so let's just keep it going.
Keep it going, guys.
Yeah,
it's in your hands. So thank you. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks for supporting us, and keep them coming. Keep those ghost stories coming. Keep the pictures coming. All of it.
All of it. Are you ready for your quote?
I am. I'm never ready. I say I am, but I'm never ready. Let's see. I had, what was it, 2 in a row that I got?
You did.
Okay, I feel like today's gonna break the trend.
It's probably going to. Okay. After a while, you learn to ignore the names people call you and just trust who you are.
Oh, that's good. I like that. I don't know what that's from.
After a while, you learn to ignore the names people call you and just trust who you are.
God, I don't know.
It's from Shrek.
Oh, I love Shrek.
I know, it's so good.
That's a good one. I should have known that.
Yay.
It's funny, because when I don't know the quotes, I always go, what could it be from? And I try to take, like, the statistician's view, and I'm like, okay, it's probably from a movie from the 90s, or the early aughts, because of the language, and let's see, it's probably a positive movie. That sounds like a very positive quote. And I start trying to figure it out, like,
right.
It's like, look, Tatum, you either know it or you don't know it.
Yeah,
like,
true.
you're not gonna puzzle this out like a game of Clue.
I know, which is why I like it. Yeah. So
Thank you,
again,
everyone.
guys.
That's it.
And remember,
It's okay to sleep with the lights on.